Chapter 2044. It was said that this was the tunnel that the white-robed monk dug little by little over the years every time he took a break. In order to dig this tunnel, he even became good friends with the tower spirit of the immortal suppressing pagoda. Wait, this pagoda, there is a pagoda spirit? Sun Shaoxing couldn't help but be shocked. He looked around in surprise. This was still the 6th floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda, a strange space with peaceful and colorful clouds. If there is really a pagoda spirit in the immortal suppressing pagoda, why didn't he notice it along the way? Although Sun Shaoxing was still a little far from the great demon king, he shouldn't be this weak. Yes, it is my good friend. The white-robed monk nodded seriously at this time and said, "Woo! Oh, brother Sure. Do you want to see it? Should I call it out and let you see it?" What kind of method was this? Sun Shaoxing glanced at the white-robed monk suspiciously, shook his head and said, "No, hold on to me. Let's leave this immortal suppressing pagoda first. Since the pagoda spirit didn't stop him along the way, there should be no problem even if he left. Su Zijuan wouldn't cheat him on this kind of thing." Looking at the compass in his hand, this should be the pass that allowed him to freely travel in the immortal suppressing pagoda. At this moment, the white-robed monk suddenly walked behind Sun Shaoxing and climbed up without saying a word. What are you doing?" Sun Shaoxing suddenly stiffened. "Brother Sure, wasn't it always like this in the past? Every time we ran away, you carried me on your back." The white-robed monk said quickly in Sun Shaoxing's ear at this time, "Brother Sure, where is your cloud? Quickly call it out. This cloud doesn't like me every time, saying that my mind is impure and doesn't let me go. But how can my mind be impure? If I'm impure, can Sister Guanyin let me go west? You really don't recognize Mount Tai. Is it really the legendary Master Sanzang, or is he just a silly monk who is too immersed in this myth and can't get out of it?" Sun Shaoxing didn't know for the time being, but he actually didn't have any cloud. It was true that he couldn't stay in this immortal suppressing pagoda for a long time. Thinking about it, he simply vibrated his demon power, and a 2-meter-long 7-colored cloud appeared under his feet. He suddenly soared into the sky. Brother Sure, I haven't seen you for many years. Why are your clouds so beautiful now? Lie down." At the moment of speaking, the compass in Sun Shaoxing's hand shone brightly. It instantly turned into a ball of light, covering the two of them. All of a sudden, they disappeared from the peaceful space. At the same time, the room where the white-robed monk stayed suddenly shrunk, as if it was twitching. After a strong vibration, the wooden house completely collapsed into a black ball. A small hand stretched out from the black ball and tore it open. A boy who was about 10 years old slowly crawled out from the black ball with a gratified look on his face. "He's finally gone. He's finally gone. I'm free. I finally don't have to listen to his chanting anymore. I'm free!" 2 streams of tears flowed down the boy's cheeks. He was so touched that he felt like he was about to ascend to the heavens. Then, the boy's body slowly merged into the peaceful earth of the 6th level. In the end, the peaceful world returned to peace. It was originally very calm. With a flash of light, Sun Shaoxing appeared on the 5th floor of the immortal suppressing tower with the white-robed monk on his back. Thinking of the terrifying gaze on the 5th floor, Sun Shaoxing didn't want to stay any longer. He quickly controlled the compass and prepared to go up to the next floor. "Brother Sure, wait a minute. Since I'm leaving, I should say goodbye to my neighbor." Sun Shaoxing didn't care. He activated the compass instantly, but at this moment, the compass was taken away by the white-robed monk without anyone noticing. At the same time, the white-robed monk grabbed the monkey hair behind Brother Shaoxing's head and said, "Go!" The hair on Sun Shaoxing's body stood up instantly. His demon nature was completely enraged. He wanted to hurt the white-robed monk regardless of whether he could win or not. However, the 5th floor of the immortal suppressing tower suddenly shook wildly. A sword light was inserted into the ground from the gloomy sky at this time. At the same time, a sacred brilliance also broke through the darkness. Gongsun Wuzong's godlike body had appeared in the sky at this time. These two guys actually fought here so quickly? Sun Shaoxing couldn't help but be shocked. The sword light that shot to the ground was launched by the white-robed young man who broke into the immortal suppressing tower. Sun Shaoxing frowned and didn't think much. He directly landed on the ground, found a boulder, and hid behind it. Monk, don't talk. There are two troublesome guys here. It's not easy to leave if you are discovered. Monk? However, the white-robed monk had already lifted his kasaya at some point in time. He ran far away without looking back, as though he was running at 3.0 times his normal speed. Wukong, the demon is coming to capture me. Hold it while I hide. See you at the old place. Again, the monk seemed to have jumped into a big pit. In a blink of an eye, he had disappeared. Sun Shaoxing opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. What the F*** King old place? Sun Shaoxing rolled his eyes a few times and smacked his lip. He squatted down all of a sudden and then turned into a stone. Then, he rolled quietly on the ground, but he was rolling in the direction of the monk's escape. What a waste! The sword Qi of Xian Yuan's sword is actually used to break the tower. I don't know if your father in the cold lake will be so angry that his blood pressure will explode if he knows about this. Sky battlefield. The white-robed young man pressed his palm forward, and the space behind him shook. Rays of golden sword Qi unfolded, and aimed at Gongsun Wuzong, who was bathed in the divine light. Uncle Wuzong, didn't you say that there is no fifth underground floor? Where is this place? How would I know? I followed you in. Gongsun Wuzong shrugged and immediately glared. Leave quickly. We are still good uncle and nephew. The white-robed young man waved his hand, and hundreds of golden light swords burst out in an instant, shooting at Gongsun Wuzong. At the same time, the white-robed young man also shouted, Long-Ear Dingguang Immortal is here. Today is the time for you to escape. Show yourself. Gongsun Wuzong's expression changed slightly when he heard this loud voice. Hey! What a prodigal son! Gongsun Wuzong gave you such a good hand, but you didn't play it. It seems that I really have to beat you up today. The white-robed young man ignored him, and still shouted the name of Long-Ear Dingguang Immortal. However, the fifth floor was still dark and gloomy. The white-robed young man's voice was loud and clear, but there was no change in it. However, Gongsun Wuzong had already waved his palm at this time, and his voice was like thunder and terrifying. The immortal suppressing pagoda is cut off from the land of Kelowna. Let's see how much sword Qi of Xian Yuan's sword you can store. The white-robed young man immediately waved his sword to meet the attack. The fifth floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda shook violently again. On the ground, the stone that Sun Shaoxing turned into was still rolling quietly. Although he was not shocked, he was quite dignified. Xianyuan Palace showed little power in the eyes of the world, but its reputation had always been great. Sun Shaoxing would not believe that there were no old monsters in this land of inheritance that had been passed down since the time of great Emperor Xianyuan. It was just that the light of Shinryu in Kelowna was too strong, so the Xianyuan Palace was overshadowed. Not to mention the white-robed young man, even Gongsun Wuzong, if he was pulled out from the Xianyuan Palace and placed in the land of Kelowna, he would probably shake both the Taoist and demon sects. That damn monk, where did he go? At this time, the stone had rolled to the big pit where the white-robed monk jumped into. But the pit was so deep that Sun Shaoxing couldn't see the bottom. Sun Shaoxing couldn't help hesitating whether to roll into the big pit or not. Whatever. The compass had been taken away by the bald monk. Without the compass, he would only be trapped in this place. Gritting his teeth, the mischievous rock finally rolled into the large pit, making a rumbling sound along the way. At the same time, in the depths of the big pit, a white-robed monk was running on a long and narrow stone bridge with a layer of clean shackles in his hands. At the bottom of this deep pit there was actually a black river. There were white bones floating in the river and black gas entangled. Only this stone bridge connected the two sides. It took a long time for the white-robed monk to run across the black bridge. In the darkness, a pagoda with golden light suddenly appeared. The golden light of this pagoda was strange. It was only released for a distance of 10 feet. More than 10 feet, it was swallowed by the darkness and did not illuminate other places at all. The white-robed monk ran to the door of the pagoda, knocked on the door and strode in. He saw that the pagoda was warm and intoxicating. As soon as he entered the pagoda, it was like walking into a wine pool and a forest of meat. The fragrance of wine overflowed. The fairies and goddesses in the wine pool were playing with each other. In front of the platform and stairs, there were many jade bodies lying on the ground, stroking their hair coquettishly. After the white-robed monk glanced at them, he lowered his head and muttered, 3,000. But at this moment, a lazy voice came from the platform. It was a fat guy with big ears and eyes like crescent moons. He was surrounded by fairies and his whole body was shining. Why are you here? The man with big ears on the throne opened his crescent moons and asked curiously. The white-robed monk held his kasaya again and jogged all the way to avoid those naked bodies on the stairs. He shouted, "Happy, I'm leaving. Before I leave, I want to see you." Hearing that, the man with big ears pinched his forehead, as if he was having a headache. He waved his hand and the beautiful fairies beside him disappeared instantly. "Don't be like this. Brother Happy, these fairies are so beautiful." The white-robed monk sighed. The man with big ears stared at him and said, "You don't come to me." Immediately, the man with big ears frowned and said, "What did you just say? You're leaving. You can leave?" "Yes, Brother Happy, I'm leaving soon, so I came to say goodbye to you." The white-robed monk said reluctantly, "For so many years, only you occasionally talk to me and tell me about your joyful sutra, so that I won't be bored. Brother Happy, I'm leaving now, but you haven't taught me the last move of the 48 moves of the joyful sutra. After today, I don't know when we can meet again. Why don't you teach me? You also know that most of the female demons on the road to the west are ferocious. If I don't have some tricks up my sleeve, I won't be able to withstand them." The man with big ears smiled bitterly and then exhaled lightly. He straightened his body and said solemnly, "The road to the west has been cut off long ago. Why are you still trapped on the road? Don't make a mistake." "Brother Happy, what are you talking about? Why is the road to the west cut off?" The white-robed monk smiled and said, "Sister Bodhisattva is still waiting for me. You don't know that Sister Bodhisattva said that when her hair reaches her waist, she will let me knock her wooden fish." The man with big ears shot out a ray of divine light from his eyes and directly shone on the white-robed monk. However, this ray of divine light was like a clay ox entering the sea. After it entered the white-robed monk's body, it disappeared instantly. The man with big ears frowned and didn't say anything. At this time, the white-robed monk had already pulled out a rolled-up futon from his back and spread it out in front of the man with big ears. He sat down with his legs crossed and said with bright eyes, "Come on, Brother Happy, I'm ready. Let me listen to the joyful sutra for the last time." "You're really an anomaly." The man with big ears shook his head and said with a smile, "There are so many Sanzang, but you're the only one who stands out. You're not crazy, you're not deranged, but your mind is clear." "Brother Happy, don't talk about it. Hurry up," the white-robed monk hurriedly urged. The man with big ears pondered at this time, and then narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Since you want it, I'll give it to you." As he said, the man with big ears stretched out his hand and a ray of golden light directly went into the white-robed monk's glabella. "Keep it well. This is not the joyful Zen Sutra. This is the Sutra of the past and future that I took from the guide. Whether you can cultivate it or not depends on your fate." A ray of golden light went into the white-robed monk's glabella, and his eyes suddenly became chaotic. He didn't know where he was, and he sat on the high platform in a daze. At this time, there was a voice outside the pagoda, calling for the long-eared fixed-light immortal. The man with big ears acted as if he didn't hear it. He waved his hand and called in 4 beautiful fairy immortals. Sinking into this gentle dream, he murmured, "Guest of the land of bliss, the god of magic of the West. The lotus is my parent, and the 9th grade establishes me. I've been deceived for so many years, and I can't go back. Why should I go back?" He waved his hand. "Go back." In an instant, the white-robed monk on the platform seemed to be swept by a soft golden light, and his figure suddenly disappeared from the pagoda. The golden light did not stop, sweeping across the cliff of the deep pit and onto the rolling stone. The mischievous stone also disappeared. However, the golden light did not stop. It shot out of the deep pit, and in the darkness of the 5th heaven, it passed through thousands of sword lights in an instant and fell on the white-robed young man and Gongsun Wuzong. Gongsun Wuzong and the white-robed young man's faces changed dramatically, but they couldn't resist at all and disappeared out of thin air. In the end, the sword lights went out of control and fell into the deep pit and into the pagoda. The man with big ears rubbed his fingers and muttered, "It's a terrible weapon. It can indeed kill gods, Buddhas, and demons. Unfortunately, the person who used it is too weak." Shaking his head, the man with big ears smiled and said loudly, "Sing!" In an instant, in the pagoda, fairies and goddesses danced, and 3,000 beauties were entangled. This was the land of bliss. Chapter 2045. A white light flashed by. On the wasteland of the 1st floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda, Gongsun Wuzong and the white-robed youth instantly fell down, and both of them were momentarily absent-minded. After recovering from the absent-mindedness, the white-robed youth's expression changed slightly. He didn't want Gongsun Wuzong to wake up half a breath earlier. Taking advantage of this moment, the white-robed youth didn't choose to attack Gongsun Wuzong. Instead, he directly shot the sword light of the Xianyuan sword into the sky of the 1st floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda. Gongsun Wuzong came back to his senses at this time. Seeing this, he already knew what the white-robed youth wanted to do. He couldn't help but put on a bitter expression, looking very much like a social animal who had just finished work and was called back by his boss before leaving the house. Simply speaking, it was like eating a piece of dung-flavored osmanthus cake. "You wild child, I won't ask you if you know what you are doing. I just want to ask you if you can clean up this mess?" "I didn't think about it, and I don't need to think about it." Gongsun Wuzong glared at the white-robed youth at this time, but he instantly turned around and rushed out of the immortal suppressing pagoda. At the same time, the entire space of the 1st floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda began to shake. Not only was the space of the 1st floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda shaking, but the entire immortal suppressing pagoda was shaking. Outside the immortal suppressing pagoda, on the mountain peak of the Kanshui Palace, all the divisions of the Xianyuan Palace had arrived, as if they were facing a great enemy. A figure shot out rapidly. Several division leaders immediately came forward and asked anxiously, "Lord Wuzong?" Gongsun Wuzong, whose hair was messy, said in a deep voice, "Gongsun Xiu opened all the restrictions of the immortal suppressing pagoda, and we don't know how many demons are about to break out. Let's fight, this is going to be a bloody battle." Everyone was shocked. Gongsun Wuzong's short sentence had already revealed too much explosive information. Gongsun Xiu didn't die. The restrictions of the immortal suppressing pagoda were broken, and those terrible guys who had been trapped for hundreds of years, thousands of years, or even longer were about to break out. "Division leaders, follow me," Gongsun Wuzong shouted at this time, waving his hands and pushing the huge door of the immortal suppressing pagoda. However, the giant door was unable to completely close. In the end, there was still a gap. He knew that this was because the seal on the giant door had already been broken. The seal could not be repaired, and this door was just a slightly harder stone. Seeing this, all the division leaders came behind Gongsun Wuzong and gathered all their strength to block the giant door. Generals, Wuzong Wuzong, Wuzong Wuzong formation, kill anyone who rushes, kill. Disciples Wuzong Wuzong palace. Hopefully, in these tens of thousands of years, the demons and devils in the immortal suppressing pagoda had already been wiped out by the spirit extinguishing space. Even if they were able to survive, they would have already reached the end of their lives. Immortal suppressing pagoda. The ground of the wasteland cracked and the sky distorted. Eyes filled with ruthlessness appeared in the distorted sky. Wuzong Wuzong Lin. It was because this white-clothed young man's body contained boundless and exuberant qi and blood. They had been starving for too long. However, the young man in white was protected by the golden light and was not afraid at all. Instead, he pointed at the exit of the immortal suppressing pagoda and sneered, "If you don't come out now, when will you? Do you want to be trapped here for thousands of years?" In a split second, the rolling gray fog transformed into a long dragon. Amidst countless ear-piercing screams, it broke through a layer of the sky of the wasteland. Countless gray fog dragons rushed towards the exit of the immortal suppressing pagoda. However, the door of the immortal suppressing pagoda was closed, leaving only a small crack. They ruthlessly slammed into the giant door that still had a trace of life. The entire wasteland space of the first floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda was almost shattered by this terrifying impact. But even so, there were still crazy evil spirits around the white-robed young man, as if they wanted to devour his fresh flesh and blood. The white-robed young man sneered and waved the sword light. "They have been trapped for too long. Most of them have become confused, or even lost their consciousness." The sword light was like the natural nemesis of these evil spirits. As the sword light fell, a series of miserable screams were heard. At the same time, on the broken wasteland, a stone quietly rolled to the side, then the stone changed and restored its original appearance. Sun Shaoxing blinked at this time and was thinking hard about countermeasures. "Help! Wukong! Help!" But at this time, in the broken wasteland, a white-robed monk was running all the way with a kasaya towards Sun Shaoxing. Behind this white-robed monk, there was actually a huge mass of black fog that was formed from evil spirits and demons that were chasing after him like a huge wave. Damn, this monk's running speed was really fast. "You don't come over! Help! Wukong! I'm scared, come and save me! Don't come over! It's too late." In this dark haze, there were countless bloodthirsty and violent eyes. Brother Shaoxing felt his scalp tingling when he looked at it. He could only run away. "Wukong, where is your big stick? Quickly use your big stick to destroy them," the white-robed monk said eagerly. "I don't have that kind of thing." Brother Shaoxing gritted his teeth. "I said, I'm not that monkey. You're a fake, a fake." Fortunately, this was not the outside world. There were no regulars in the Elysium bar, otherwise, Brother Shaoxing felt that his character would collapse. "Oh no, are the two of us going to die here today?" the white-robed monk said in grief. "No. I have so many friends on the road to the west. They will be sad. Sister Bodhisattva will also be sad. Wukong, quickly think of a way." "You damn monk!" Brother Shaoxing's teeth were aching. "Your fist is so powerful. What are you afraid of? Just rush forward." "Hey! You traitor! You need me to do this kind of thing. Why would I accept you as my disciple?" I said, "I'm not your disciple." Sun Shaoxing gritted his teeth and simply ignored the monk. He unleashed all his demon power and rushed forward. Unexpectedly, the white-robed monk still managed to grab hold of the corner of his clothes when he suddenly sped up. Looking at the monk's appearance, Sun Shaoxing was secretly angry. When he was about to get rid of the other party, the white-robed monk had already climbed behind him and said excitedly, "It's open! It's open! Wukong, go!" "It's open?" Sun Shaoxing was stunned. he saw that the gate of the immortal suppressing pagoda had been broken by the terrifying fog at this time. Suddenly, like a flood, the demons in the immortal suppressing pagoda surged out and crashed into the gate. Sun Xiaoxing's eyes turned, and he suddenly blew a mouthful of air. It turned into a gray mist, covering himself and the white-robed monk. They instantly blended into these demons and flashed out of the gate of the immortal suppressing pagoda. Huh? The white-robed young man seemed to have noticed something. He stared at the turbulent gate for a moment. He couldn't help but frown. He felt that something seemed to have blended into it, but he couldn't figure it out in a short time. This time, he broke into the Xian Yuan Palace alone for the thing on the 5th floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda. However, he was directly teleported out before he encountered it. The white-robed young man didn't accomplish what he wanted to do. Releasing the demons on the upper floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda was just a temporary action. Is it the pagoda spirit or the guy on the 5th floor that teleported me? He looked at the broken layer of the wasteland and knew that he couldn't go down to the lower floor again. After all, he couldn't really master the heavenly weapon Xian Yuan. He could only spend time to summon the sword light of Xian Yuan from the ground or store the sword light on his body in advance. Not much. At most, he could store 3 sword lights at a time. Among these 3 sword lights, one was used to break the gate of the immortal suppressing pagoda, one was used to support him to break into the 5th floor of the underground, and the third was used to break the prohibition of the immortal suppressing pagoda on the ground. The white-robed young man shook his head. After this time, he probably wouldn't have the chance to enter the immortal suppressing pagoda again. Glancing at the broken wasteland without any reluctance, the white-robed young man's figure flashed. He had already knocked away a large number of demons and directly appeared outside the immortal suppressing pagoda. At this time, outside the immortal suppressing pagoda, the top of the Kanshui Palace mountain had become a terrifying battlefield. The demons on the upper floor of the immortal suppressing pagoda had been trapped for many years and had suffered a loss of blood. Now that they encountered the disciples of the Xian Yuan Palace, their hatred instantly erupted. They all rushed toward these vigorous martial warriors, wanting to devour them to restore their vitality. However, the Xian Yuan Palace wasn't a greenhouse flower that had been living in seclusion for countless years. They had been maintaining the war with the deep-sea demons. Along the way, they had experienced blood and fire, so they weren't afraid of war at all. Especially after the prince of the underwater city appeared and brought the news that the deep-sea demons had been exterminated, a large number of Xian Yuan Palace warriors guarding the deep sea had returned one after another. The combat power of this group of warriors was particularly amazing. Although the demons trapped in the immortal suppressing pagoda were powerful, they were still alive after being trapped for so many years. One could imagine how terrifying they were at that time. However, after being trapped for so many years, their vitality had been damaged, and most of them had even lost their minds and were acting on instinct. The battle between the two sides was in a stalemate for a while. While the Xian Yuan Palace warriors were constantly killed, the demons who rushed out were also directly killed. The top of the Kanshui Palace mountain turned into a chaotic battlefield. In the battlefield, Sun Xiaoxing and the white-robed monk walked carefully. At this time, the Xian Yuan Palace was in a mess, which was a great opportunity to escape from the Xian Yuan Palace. Brother Xiaoxing knew that he couldn't control this kind of battle, so he could only take the white-robed monk to Su Zijuan and report to her. However, he didn't know if Su Zijuan would be furious after knowing that the immortal suppressing pagoda was broken and the demons rushed out. At this time, the sky above the Xian Yuan Palace was distorted again. In the distortion, one could vaguely see the vast sea. Who opened the boundary of the Xian Yuan's secret realm? It's Gongsun Xiu. As the favored one of the Gongsun clan, he naturally knows the secret method of opening the secret realm. Damn it! He intends to release all these demons. All the warriors, listen to my order. Quickly go and block the exit. Quickly find Gongsun Xiu. However, on the top of the Kanshui Palace mountain, the demons were wreaking havoc. There were screams and tragic battles everywhere. Where could they find the white-robed young man? There are not many guys who still have some consciousness, and there are even fewer who can be used. Sure enough, they have been trapped for too long. The white-robed young man silently looked at the exit of the Xian Yuan's secret realm that had been opened. At this time, there were not many guys who rushed to the exit. More of them were instinctively trying to devour the flesh and blood of the Xian Yuan Palace warriors. Although there are only a few of them, they have survived until now. Once they recover, there will be a lot of surprises. The white-robed young man took a step forward. Although he had only achieved a small part of the purpose of entering the Xian Yuan Palace today, he couldn't continue to stay here. It's time to go. With a flash, he had already appeared in front of the distorted exit. One step forward and he would be able to see the sea outside. At this moment, a terrifying sword energy suddenly appeared. The white-robed young man's eyes narrowed as he suddenly raised his head. The sword chi had already swept past his body. His pupils instantly condensed into a single point, and his body was forcibly moved a few centimeters in that instant. However, this terrifying sword energy still ultimately chopped off his right arm and half of his right leg. At this moment, he couldn't even feel the pain from the injuries on his body. However, this pain directly erupted crazily in between breaths. The white-robed young man was in a daze for a moment. At the exit of the Xian Yuan secret realm, a small figure slightly raised her hand and coldly glanced inside the Xian Yuan palace. "It's you." The person who stood at the exit of the secret realm was the current princess of the Xian Yuan royal family, Su Zijuan. At this moment, Su Zijuan appeared at the exit. Her eyes moved and landed on the white-robed young man who had one arm and half of his leg chopped off. A cold smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. "Inferior goods. You can only use a few strands of sword energy and you're already causing trouble everywhere." She raised her hand again and sneered. "I'll let you see what the real god-slaying sword is." Chopping down. Sword energy was like a meteor. From the entrance of the secret realm, thousands of sword energy turned into endless meteors and swept down, directly hitting the evil demon on the top of the Kanshui Palace. There were also hundreds and thousands of meteors that directly bombarded the white-robed young man. The sky seemed to have turned into a polar night. Only the endless golden meteor shower shone in the world. "It's Her Highness! Her Highness is back!" The golden meteors gradually dispersed. The top of the Kanshui Palace was full of holes. The small figure who brought about the meteor shower was now quietly standing on the only remaining peak of the Kanshui Palace. "Princess." Several figures landed almost simultaneously behind Su Zijuan. Among them was Gongsun Wuzong. This subject deserves to die 10,000 deaths for failing to guard the immortal suppressing pagoda. Wuzong is willing to enter the cold pond and reflect on his mistakes for 100 years. Gongsun Wuzong directly knelt down and asked for forgiveness. "You're a bachelor." Su Zijuan snorted. The immortal suppressing pagoda was destroyed. Although I killed more than half of them, there were still some who managed to escape. Now that the palace is damaged, we need more people. Do you want to slack off in the cold pond? Gongsun Wuzong bowed his head and said nothing. He thought that only by seeing through and not exposing it could they be good friends. The princess couldn't be friends. Su Zijuan waved her hand. "Go down and do what you need to do." Several division leaders looked at each other at this time, bowed their heads, and then jumped out of the remaining peak to clean up. After a while, Su Zijuan pondered something, then she turned around and looked at the peak. She said indifferently, "How long are you going to hide?" Behind a pine tree on the peak, a white-robed monk walked out at this time. As for the pine tree, it turned into Sun Xiaoxing's appearance after it turned into mist. Sun Xiaoxing frowned at this time. He ignored the white-robed monk beside him and walked to Su Zijuan. You did it on purpose? Su Zijuan said indifferently, I asked you to take the thing. I won't really let you take the risk. Naturally, I will follow behind you. I just didn't expect that there was a troublesome guy who happened to come. But it's just right. It saves me the trouble of looking for him. Anyway, I have to deal with him sooner or later. I just happened to meet him, so I just killed him. Is that guy dead? Sun Shaoxing thought for a while and said with a strange expression, You can really kill him. I heard that this is your fiancé? It's old news. Su Zijuan shook her head. I won't be soft-hearted if I kill him, but this guy is lucky enough to run away. Sun Shaoxing turned his eyes and immediately looked at the white-robed monk beside him. He was silent. Su Zijuan looked directly at the white-robed monk at this time, and said with a smile, Little bald head, long time no see. Amitabha, female benefactor, is too polite. The white-robed monk bowed at this time. Female benefactor, are you here to covet my body again? Come on, I am ready to sacrifice myself to obtain the essence. Who wants your broken body? Su Zijuan sneered. I want your treasure box. Give it to me. No. Wukong. Save me. This demoness is unreasonable. The white-robed monk screamed instantly. Sun Shaoxing ignored him. He rolled his eyes and flashed to the side. Wukong, you are being naughty again. The white-robed monk suddenly cheated and stomped his feet. Su Zijuan waved her hand, and a bloody big hand rushed out instantly and grabbed the white-robed monk directly. She sneered. Little bald head, this is not the immortal suppressing pagoda. There is no way to block the breath of an intruder like you. If you don't want to be suppressed by the heavenly Tao here and never be reincarnated, hand over the treasure box obediently. The white-robed monk lowered his head and said nothing at this time. When Sun Shaoxing saw this, he said directly, Zijuan, my love, the thing you want seems to be in the arms of this bald monk. I saw him put it in with my own eyes. The white-robed monk suddenly raised his eyes and muttered to himself, Traitor, traitor! I didn't expect Wukong to betray me for beauty. My heart hurts. Padesh. Su Zijuan's bloody big hand instantly cracked at this time. Su Zijuan frowned. When she was about to make a move, she saw the white-robed monk clenched his fist at this time and waved it at Sun Shaoxing. Again? Seeing this, Sun Shaoxing's face suddenly turned black. Seeing the white-robed monk raising his fist and listening to him saying heartbreaking words, Sun Shaoxing shuddered suddenly. I want to be alone. It seems that my teaching method is wrong. Unexpectedly, the white-robed monk suddenly calmed down and then quickly took out a long box from his arms and opened it directly. Damn it! Su Zijuan suddenly shuddered and rushed out. However, she had already eaten it. When she arrived in a flash, the white-robed monk had already disappeared into thin air under the flash of yellow light from the box. Su Zijuan's face suddenly turned green. Zijuan, my love. This guy? Sun Shaoxing asked subconsciously. Su Zijuan said bitterly, This damn baldy, you can't escape from this world. I will definitely find you. In the dim room, a rather complicated magic array flashed. In the array, a figure fell. One arm was broken, half of his leg was cut off, and his body was full of injuries. The white-robed young man who fell at this time gritted his teeth and used his remaining arm to crawl up with difficulty. He crawled to the end of the room with blood all the way, turned over, leaned against the wall, and gasped for breath. I can only use the flash scroll left by the magician to escape, really. At that moment he almost died. And the one who died was definitely the real him, not the large number of bloodline experimental subjects that could be swallowed. At this time, a light shadow was suddenly projected from a mirror in the room. It was a light ball. Sir, what do you need? Prepare the most advanced treatment cabin for me and the body repair surgery. As soon as he finished this sentence, the white-robed young man fainted directly. But the order had been issued, and the light ball had recorded it, Then it began to operate. In the Forbidden City, there was a supermarket that had a special sale today. In the pulping area, a yellow light suddenly flashed, and then a monk wearing a white cassock suddenly fell down. At the same time, he knocked down a pile of pulping paper. The monk was suddenly buried in strips of pulping paper. He pulled out the things on his body awkwardly and climbed out. As soon as he looked up, he saw a woman with long blonde hair looking at him with some surprise. Next to her, there was a black-haired young man who also blinked slightly in surprise at this time. The white-robed monk was startled as if he saw something terrible. He instantly shuddered and quickly opened the long box in his hand again. But after opening and closing it several times, the long box no longer emitted that yellow light. The white-robed monk instantly coughed twice in embarrassment and then put the box into the belt on his back. Then, he tidied up the messy cassock on his body and put his palms together, saying, "Ah me two patrons, this little monk is the brother of the great Tang of the East, Master Sanzang. Greetings. Can I ask for a favor?" "Sanzang?" the black-haired young man asked with some interest. "I wonder what is buried there." The white-robed monk said with a calm expression, "Sanzang 5 Viscera Temple. This little monk is really hungry." The black-haired young man smiled and said, "Yu Yi, let's have lunch, treat this master to a meal." "Okay," the blonde lady replied softly. The white-robed monk said with an expectant face, "Meat. Steak then." The black-haired young man, Boss Luo, smiled and said, "Today's steak is 30% off." Chapter 2046. In the Xianyuan Palace's secret realm, the distorted entrance was slowly closing. On the peak of the Kanshui Palace, Su Zijuan stretched out a hand, and the remnant souls of the demons that had been wiped out by God's slaying sword energy gathered around her. No one dared question the princess of the Xianyuan Palace, since she was the one who'd made the move. They'd always been very clear about their hierarchy. Even though the princess had recklessly turned into a drought demon, she hadn't completely lost her bloodline. After all, the Yellow Emperor had a daughter in the ancient times who'd also been a drought demon. The subjects didn't dare question what the princess wanted to do. What they needed to do most now was to clean up the battlefield. Her Highness killed the demons last, so she must have seen the opportunity and delivered the final blow. That's why this happened. But if she'd acted earlier, the various tribes wouldn't have suffered such heavy losses. Although there are many injured, and many of the generals are so badly injured that they won't be able to recover in 3 to 5 years, there aren't many dead, and most of the Golden Sword and Silver Sword generals are from the Gongsun clan. It seems that Her Highness wants to teach the Gongsun clan a lesson after Gongsun Xiu's repeated rebellions. Shu. Don't talk about Her Highness behind her back. I wonder what Her Highness plans to do with the remnant souls of the demons after taking them away. They're excellent materials for forging murderous weapons. Perhaps there are still some demons that haven't left the immortal ceiling pagoda. They've been suppressed by the pagoda for countless years, and many of their consciousnesses have been destroyed. They can only wander around the various levels of the pagoda and don't know how to leave even when the doors are broken open. Perhaps we can go in and clean them up. Let's go together. Since the restrictions in the immortal ceiling pagoda have been broken, we need to go in and repair them. This isn't the immortal ceiling pagoda. Suddenly, everyone heard Gongsun Wuzong's words. After saying that, Gongsun Wuzong did not say anything else and silently returned to the Kanshui Palace. The culprit behind the chaos in Xianyuan Palace was Gongsun Xiu, who had come back from the dead. As a member of the Gongsun clan, the Gongsun clan of the Qian tribe would probably be in an extremely awkward position in Xianyuan Palace after this battle. They all knew that it was better not to offend Gongsun family at this moment. Not the real immortal suppressing pagoda? Sun Shaoxing was standing behind Su Zijuan at this time, avoiding the eyes of the people under the peak. At this time, Su Zijuan said indifferently, "The one on the ground is the devil suppressing pagoda, the one underground is the immortal suppressing pagoda. Although the devil-suppressing pagoda's ability to imprison devils was inferior, it was merely an imitation of the immortal suppressing pagoda made by the ancestors of the Xianyuan Palace. But in fact, the difference is more than one level. Suppressing immortal pagoda. What is it? Sun Shaoxing frowned. Although he had found the white-robed monk on the 6th floor, he had felt at least 4 terrifying gazes on the first 5 floors. Those gazes were far stronger than those of the demons in the demon-suppressing pagoda. Su Zijuan did not continue. Sun Shaoxing, I will send you out of the palace later. Don't tell anyone about this matter, just pretend that you don't know anything. It's up to you whether you want to go back to the place where you obtained Tao or go somewhere else. Brother Shaoxing smacked his lips and asked tentatively, Nothing? The secret of the Heaven Sutra is on the monk. Su Zijuan took a deep look at Brother Shaoxing. Your birth is specious, and no one knows your origin. Maybe you can find the answer from this monk. Thinking of the white-robed monk's heart-wrenching iron fist, Brother Shaoxing could not help but shudder. Boring, boring. Sun Shaoxing's head was shaking. Su Zijuan waved her hand, and a golden light instantly sent him out of the Xianyuan secret realm. There were countless restrictions in the secret realm, and only the real Xianyuan royal bloodline could control them all. Su Zijuan's control of the Xianyuan secret realm was just like the control of the Radiance Tower of the Magician Association on the Inhuman Domain. I'm invincible. All division leaders, enter the palace for a meeting. At this time, the royal princess turned into a bloody light and instantly disappeared into the main hall of the Xianyuan Palace in the mountains. At this time, Chichikamaya still did not know what happened in the Xianyuan Palace. Because of this, the old turtle was in the building of the summit meeting with the 100 Tribulations Taoist. Before the meeting officially began, they asked for a tea room to discuss the tea ceremony. Especially the green tea ceremony. Taoist, why don't I see the girl who represented the Taoist Association on the day of the Strength Conference? Chichikamaya suddenly asked with a smile. The 100 Tribulations Taoist said with a smile. When did Elder Turtle start to be interested in older women? Chichikamaya put down the teacup. If I didn't guess wrong, this girl's background is not small. I'm really shocked by the means of the Taoist Association. The 100 Tribulations Taoist was still smiling. This is not the work of the Taoist Association. It's a coincidence. The few Taoist elders accompanying them did not know what kind of riddle these 2 old fellows were playing. Even though they wanted to know what was behind the riddle, they were more curious about something else. Between the 100 Tribulations Taoist and the head of the Chichikamaya of the Xianyuan Palace, who was older? At this time, an agent of the administration knocked on the door respectfully and entered. 100 Tribulations Taoist, Elder Turtle, everyone. The meeting is about to start, please follow me. The 100 Tribulations Taoist put down the teacup and suddenly said, It seems to be quieter today. Are there fewer people? The agent's face suddenly turned pale. He said in a low voice, Today, many representatives haven't arrived yet. Chichikamaya frowned slightly. He knew there was more to it. The agent nodded and said in a lower voice, According to the statistics, more than a quarter of the representatives left the city of abstinence before dawn. It seems to have been discussed beforehand. Chichikamaya and the 100 Tribulations Taoist looked at each other. The 2 old guys didn't say anything. They just nodded, got up, left their seats and entered the meeting. Why are there so many empty seats? The preparation for entering the meeting was done, and they had waited for nearly an hour. It was almost 10:30 in the morning, but more than a quarter of the seats were still empty. In the media area, Madame Rin seemed to have sensed that something was going to happen. Then, she checked the seat list in her hand and began to look for the representatives that hadn't arrived yet. Galyang Mountain, 13 ancient clans. The group from ancient Persia didn't come either. Nanyang, Malawi. There aren't many left either. Almost 70% of the representatives from the non-middle continent are absent. So many? There aren't any representatives from Oceania left? Isn't this a little too much? At this moment, as the organizer of this transcendent summit, the Kelowna Authority, someone entered the meeting. It was the person in charge, Fire Cloud Evil God. Renziling also withdrew her thoughts at this time and locked her eyes on the person in charge. The scene was extremely quiet. It was much quieter than any other day's summit meeting. At this time, Fire Cloud Evil God walked directly to the rostrum and waved his hand. The official spokesperson walked to the front of the rostrum with a solemn expression. Everyone, before today's meeting officially begins, I'd like to explain some of the absence of representatives today. With that said, the spokesperson raised a document in his hand. An hour ago we received these messages. They were all messages from the absent delegations. These absent representatives expressed that they voluntarily gave up joining the World Transcendent Association. In the venue, everyone couldn't help but whisper to each other. They had been in the meeting for some time, so how could they not know that those people hadn't arrived? At this time, after confirming this matter from the spokesperson, they quickly thought of the plans of these absent representatives. These absent fellows were basically those who didn't get a single spot on the board of directors in the Power Conference earlier. Since they couldn't get a spot, then it was fine if they didn't join the Transcendent Association. There were many countries in the world, and there were strong and weak countries. A weak country had no advantage. But as an extraordinaire, they didn't think so. Which extraordinaire wasn't a prideful person. They could be kings in their own fields, but once they joined the Transcendent Association, they wouldn't get any practical power. Instead, they would be restricted by the board of directors, so naturally they wouldn't be willing. Why not just leave and ignore this Transcendent Association? Originally, before this summit meeting, the extraordinaire circles all over the world were running their own businesses. The establishment of the Transcendent Association is based on the principle of voluntary participation. While working to protect the rights of extraordinaires, it is also committed to peaceful coexistence with humans. As for the representatives who gave up on joining, I personally feel sorry on behalf of the Kelowna Authority. But based on the principle of friendly coexistence, I hope that everyone here won't have any prejudice. After all, the live broadcast had already started, and it had to face the eyes of the whole world. Then, the spokesperson began to announce the first matter of the day. He didn't directly enter the agenda of the establishment of the Transcendent Association. Instead, he temporarily gave the speech to the Magician Association. The person on stage was the Ice Tower Master of the Magician Association. Until now, this blue-clothed beauty, one of the highest tower masters of the Magician Association, had spoken for the first time under the eyes of the public. The Ice Tower Master said a few things that directly ignited the public opinion of the entire Eurasian continent. First, the Ice Tower Master directly admitted that among the higher-ups of the Interpol, there were many people from the Magician Association. This indirectly admitted that the Magician Association had been secretly controlling the Eurasian continent all this time. Second, on behalf of the Interpol, she apologized to the people in Eurasian continent who had been involved in extraordinary incidents and announced that they would give more compensation to the victims. They even promised that if the victims' family members had the qualifications, they would be given priority in the first academy of the Magician Association. Third, regarding the vicious execution of extraordinary creatures that happened last night, they dealt with it. The results were as follows: 1. The person in charge of the Special Affairs Department will be held accountable. 2. The charges against the members of Ice Cream Pudding will be withdrawn. 3. A new department will be established to supervise the Special Affairs Department, and it will be temporarily named the Public Order Squad. The first batch of members of the Public Order Squad will be members of Ice Cream Pudding. 4. The Public Order Squad will be directly responsible to the Board of Directors of the Extraordinaire Association that will be established soon. As soon as these words came out, The public opinion in Eurasian continent was in an uproar. This ice lady is so bold. The Magician Association is such a huge organization, and they directly came out to admit their mistakes without any hesitation. This directly blocked the mouths of many people, right? The members of Ice Cream Pudding suddenly became members of the Public Order Squad. They already have a deep prejudice against transcendence. Will they really agree? Why not? What can they do if they don't agree? But if they agree, they will have some power. I just don't know how much power they will have. It's not certain if the rioting humans will accept this kind of treatment. It's better than causing extreme hatred. The rioting has spread to dozens of countries and hundreds of big cities. Next, we will officially enter the agenda of the establishment of the Extraordinaire Association. At this moment, the spokesperson replaced the Ice Tower Master on stage and said loudly. He would read out the organizational structure and rules of the World Extraordinaire Association one by one. There was also the most important draft of the Extraordinaire Treatment Bill. Boss Luo would not casually bring a strange man home. However, since he had agreed to treat him to a meal, he naturally could not just casually find a restaurant. At this moment, in a small seaside town in Britain, the servant girl was using a spoon to slowly pour boiling hot butter onto the steak that was gradually ripening. The aroma of fresh meat floated out of the kitchen. In the living room, the white-robed monk, Master Sanzang, wiped his saliva over and over again and kept saying that he had sinned, sinned, sinned. On the television screen, the scene of the Extraordinaire Summit was being broadcasted. Boss Luo was currently playing with a long box. This wooden box was quite old. The wood was so old that it looked like the wood of a sunken ship that had been picked up and dried under the sun. There was even a faint smell of decay. From what Master Sanzang said, this wooden box was called the Moonlight Treasure Box. It was said to be a mystical treasure box that could travel through time and space, bringing the holder to any time and space. It could help people resolve all their regret. Traveling through time was not easy, but if it was just traveling through space, Luochio did not think that it was too difficult. Traveling through space was actually traveling through different subworlds. This kind of thing could be done through the cracks in the dimensions, but that was the domain of the strong who had broken through the limits of the subworlds. If one did not enter the dimensional void, they could only be imprisoned in the subworld. However, there were still some mystical items that could allow people to travel between different subworlds. If not counting the shop's critical gate, Boss Luo had previously encountered another item that could help people travel between different subworlds: the Horus Ring. So, Master Sanzang used the power of the treasure box to come to this time and space? Boss Luo directly returned the treasure box to the white-robed Master Sanzang and asked casually. Master Sanzang smiled awkwardly and put away the treasure box with a flash of his hand. Then, he looked left and right and made a shushing gesture before saying sneakily, "Shoo. Actually, it's not like that. I just wanted to see if the treasure box could bring me directly to the Tempest Temple. You see, these 81 difficulties are really troublesome. Along the way, the male demons are fierce, the female demons want to sleep with me, and my disciples don't let me be at ease. Using the treasure box's power to directly reach the end of the journey to the west?" Boss Luo could not help but be stunned. This Master Sanzang unexpectedly had a lot of ideas? "Eat first, Master Sanzang." Boss Luo smiled slightly and stood up. "The food is ready." "Good." Master Sanzang slammed the table and stood up. "Wine and meat pass through the intestines, but the Buddha stays in the heart." "Very good." Chapter 2047. Venerable Sanzang was clearly not used to using knives and forks. Seeing him pick up a table knife as if it was a battle saber and a fork as if it was a halberd, Miss Maid smiled and began to carefully cut the steak on the plate before scooping it out. Boss Luo handed him another pair of chopsticks. The venerable Sanzang raised his eyebrows and said with a smile that this was the best reception he had received since his journey west, not counting the time when his brother, the Emperor of Tang of the East, sent him off. The maid was as beautiful as a painting, and the host was generous, so he was excited and ate first as a form of respect. Perhaps he was really hungry, for his sharp teeth immediately began to tear the meat in his mouth. She gobbled up the food and even ate Boss Luo's share. Seeing this, the servant girl hurriedly went back to the kitchen and continued to make steak. Because it was a discount, they had bought quite a lot of steak today. However, this was a matter of slow work, and the venerable Sanzang was naturally impatient. He could only say that he couldn't wait and wanted to drink wine. Boss Luo poured wine for the venerable Sanzang, using a luminous glass. Venerable Sanzang was clearly not worried when the wine entered his intestines. He drank 4 cups of wine in a row, his face flushed, and he was satisfied. He was slightly tipsy. The venerable Sanzang spoke the truth after drinking, complaining about his bitter experiences on the journey west. He was very much like those old social animals who didn't want to go home after work and only wanted to go to the bar to complain about their midlife crisis. Why wasn't Wukong a female monkey? It was said that female monkeys were more obedient and likable. Second brother had too much of an appetite. He couldn't even handle begging for alms 4 times in the morning, noon, and night. He didn't even know how many part-time jobs he had to take to barely survive on the journey west. Third brother was good, but he was really trash. How could a master stand in front to protect a disciple? If someone were to die, shouldn't the disciple die first? However, being able to wash his master's underwear was still acceptable. Fourth brother. It was fine not to mention fourth brother, because fourth brother liked to poop and find fillies the most. For this, the master and disciples had racked their brains. He said that Sister Bodhisattva's tea skills were very good, and that Brother Rulai's hairstyle was really ugly. They all wanted to be bald, so why did he have to be fashionable? Brother Emperor of the Great Tang is still the best. He often has long conversations with him, drinking wine and chatting merrily. The only thing missing is sharing the harem. Sure enough, they are good brothers, much better than those painted on the Xuanwu Gate. Oh, is the beef ready again? The journey to the west was really tiring. Full on, go one. My name is San Zong, Zong as in funeral. Fuck you. Huff, 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 huff. This mage is an interesting person, Miss Maid said with a smile as she cleaned up the tableware. Seeing that the mage was drunk and sleeping soundly on the table, Adam went downstairs and carried the mage to the guest room to rest. Hey! Where are you going, monster? Quickly put down the gold, silver, and valuables and allow this little monk to redeem you. Probably because he was drunk, the mage let out a deafening roar in the guest room. Then, he turned around and went back to sleep. Boss Luo wanted to digest his food after the meal. Seeing that the grass on the lawn outside was a little long, he simply went to the tool room to get a lawn mower. Wearing a straw hat to block the sun, he began to walk slowly on the lawn to relieve his stress. The Supernatural Summit was still in session, so he could still watch it here. There was no problem with the organizational structure discussion, so it was done in one go. After that, it was the Security Council's matter. In the Power Conference, other than luck, there was also one's fists. Those with bigger fists had bigger voices, so there was no problem. In fact, what they were most concerned about was whether the Supernatural Association would be able to provide monetary support, as well as whether there would be mutual exchanges. However, these matters were not suitable to be discussed during a live broadcast. Therefore, they had drafted a small meeting after the summit to discuss these matters. In the end, under the increasingly impatient gaze of Kelowna Shinryu, the evil god of Fire Cloud had no choice but to brace himself and proposed to set up a special shifter zone in Kelowna. Instantly, it received the unanimous approval of all the shifter leaders. The other representatives did not have any objections, especially the Magician Association, because they had the inhuman territory. However, the location of the special shifter zone was a problem that needed careful consideration. If they could not decide on it during the summit, they would discuss it later. There was no problem with the shifter zone. This time, the plan was to be made, not drawn, so there was no problem. Then, it was time to discuss the draft of the supernatural bill. When humans committed crimes, they were punished by the laws of their respective countries. Since the supernatural had an organization, there should naturally be laws. These laws were not the original rules of their respective circles, the rules of the so-called sects, or the teachings of the tribes. It was a law that applied to all transcendent. This would take a long time to discuss, at least not today. It was rather boring, so Kelowna Shinryu lowered his head and played with his phone. The sun was still shining brightly in Kelowna, and the British had already ushered in the night before. The moon hung high in the sky. It was not long after the 15th, and the moon was still quite round. Although it was late at night, it felt like an afternoon nap. Wizard Sanzong rubbed his head as he walked out. He saw Boss Luo reading under a tree in the courtyard outside, so he walked over. Miss Maid was gently sitting beside Boss Luo to accompany him. Wizard Sanzong glanced at the book and realized that he could not understand the words on it, so he simply took out a futon and sat under the tree in a daze. Wizard Sanzong kept looking at the tree above his head. Suddenly, he asked if the tree would bear fruit. Boss Luo was not angry that his reading was interrupted. He just casually said that it was just a green tree and would not bear any fruit. Wizard Sanzong said, "Bao, what a pity!" "Why is it a pity?" Boss Luo asked curiously. Wizard Sanzang's interest was immediately piqued. He began to talk about the glorious achievements of the master and disciples in a place called Five Immortals Temple. I grabbed one of those ginseng fruits with each hand and held one in my mouth. It felt so good. If the fruit did not take so long to bear fruit, I would definitely go and grab it a few more times. Boss Luo sized up Wizard Sanzong again. Boss Luo had actually grown up listening to the story of the journey to the West. Central TV even replayed it every summer, but it did not seem to be available for the past few years. It seemed like the age of the young people of his generation was about to pass. However, Wizard Sanzang's journey to the West was probably the opposite. "This is not Five Immortals Temple," Boss Luo said with a smile. "There's nothing valuable here." Wizard Sanzong smiled awkwardly. Then, he shifted his butt. In his wide kasaya, there was a piece of soap for washing his hands. He had stolen it from the guest room's washroom. "May I know the great immortal's name?" Wizard Sanzong suddenly sat up straight, his expression solemn. Boss Luo shook his head. "I'm not an immortal. I'm just a businessman." Wizard Sanzang's expression immediately changed. His face turned pale as he hurriedly said, "Oh no, I just came out and I've lost both the person and the money. Can I put the inn's room on credit? You said you would treat me to a meal." And Boss Luo could not help but be stunned. Wizard Sanzong said in puzzlement, "There are so many rooms here, and they're unprecedentedly exquisite. The owner must have put in a lot of effort to decorate this place. Could it be that only 2 people are staying here? Isn't it a little too wasteful?" Boss Luo smiled and said, "Wizard, you're right. It's indeed a little wasteful. However, I like peace and quiet. There's naturally no problem with fewer people." Wizard Sanzong immediately gave him a thumbs up. "Rich, willful. Role model for my generation." The rich one was clearly not the boss, but the servant lady who owned properties in various subworlds. The servant lady stood up with a smile, saying that she was going to make some tea. Wizard Sanzong immediately muttered, "Demonis, Demonis, there's no such outstanding Demonis on the road to the West." He hurriedly chanted the Bodhisattva Heart Sutra, saying that he could only resist by visualizing his beloved Bodhisattva. Boss Luo suddenly asked, "Wizard, where did you obtain the Moonlight Treasure Box?" Wizard Sanzong directly said that a Demonis had given it to him as a token of love. He had not planned on accepting it, but he did not expect the demoness to humiliate him with her large breasts, forcing him to accept it. In the end, he could only reluctantly accept it. Boss Luo thought for a moment and said, "I'm somewhat interested in this treasure box. If you're willing, you can use it to exchange for something from me." Wizard San Zong thought for a moment and said, "Can I exchange it for something else?" Boss Luo shook his head. "Then I won't exchange it." Wizard San Zong shook his head as well. "I'm afraid that the original owner of the treasure box will look at it with a knife and say that he gave it to me by mistake." Boss Luo did not mind and asked casually, "Wizard, where do you plan on going next?" Master Sanzang thought about it and sighed. "It looks like we can only continue heading west. Little Monk's blessings are all on the Western Paradise. If we don't reach the Western Paradise, Brother Rulai won't give Little Monk a salary." "I can send you to the Western Paradise," Boss Luo said suddenly. "You'll be there in one stop." "Really?" Wizard San Zong immediately jumped up, his heart pounding and his eyes shining. However, he immediately sat down again and looked around before whispering sneakily, "Sir, you can get a demoness for free, but you can't speak carelessly. Brother Rulai has long ears and can hear you." "Then I don't think he can control me," Boss Luo said with a smile. "Of course, I usually can't control that person." Wizard San Zong seemed to be tempted. His breathing quickened and his expression changed. However, in the end, he shook his head vigorously like a deflated balloon. No, I still can't. The gods in the heavens are watching me. If I'm discovered, I won't be able to explain myself." Boss Luo joked, "Didn't you also want to use the treasure box to get everything done in one go?" Wizard San Zong sighed and said, "That's why I came to this strange place. This is my punishment. To tell you the truth, I'm afraid that you'll trick me." Boss Luo was a Buddhist businessman, so he didn't insist. After a non-committal smile, he suddenly stretched out his hand. Wizard San Zong blinked. At that moment, a fruit suddenly appeared on the tree crown above his head. The fruit fell directly into Boss Luo's palm. "My treat," Boss Luo said with a smile. "It'll relieve boredom." Wizard San Zong took it with both hands and took a bite. He smiled and said, "It's much worse than Brother Zenyuanzi's fruit, but it still tastes good." Boss Luo did not mind and continued flipping through his book. Wizard San Zong ate the fruit bite by bite. It was actually just a slightly sweeter pear. As he ate, the wizard's eyes began to look around randomly. He suddenly saw a string of prayer beads on Boss Luo's wrist. He was stunned and asked curiously, "Benefactor, where did you get this bracelet?" Boss Luo glanced at the prayer beads on his wrist and smiled. "An elder gave it to me. It's good stuff." Wizard San Zong nodded. "Buddhism does not exist in this world, and there's almost no Buddhist power. However, this prayer bead still has Buddhist nature. It must be a relic of an accomplished monk." Boss Luo suddenly smiled and said, "Wizard, are you interested in this bracelet?" As he spoke, Boss Luo even took off the prayer beads on his wrist. Wizard San Zang's eyes lit up. "I heard that there are 2 bad guys in front of the Tempest Temple who won't give me treasures or entry. This little monk thinks that it's not a good idea to freeload on this journey to the west. I've already used up all the money, gold, cassock, and staff that Big Brother Emperor gave me. I was just worrying about how to deal with those 2 bad guys in the future. Thank you, Benefactor." He offered it with both hands. Boss Luo smiled. He passed the prayer beads from his left hand to his right, and then to his left wrist. "I didn't say I'd give it to you." Wizard San Zang's eyes widened and his mouth fell open. He slapped his head and stood up, saying angrily, "Hey! You're a bad guy too." He was angry. Boss Luo, however, looked ahead. It was the servant girl who had returned with the brewed tea. He only had eyes for her now. Wizard San Zong became bored and sat down again. He smacked his lips and chanted, "Color is not emptiness, emptiness is not color. Sister Ren, Xiao Shi, what do you want to eat tonight?" I'll buy some groceries after work. Xiao Shi, thank you, Sisterin. Anything is fine as long as I can eat my fill. I'm not picky. Sisterin, Xiao Shi is a good girl. But Xiao Shi needs more nutrition. Look at you. You're so thin. You won't grow if you don't eat more. Xiao Shi, Kelowna Shinryu glanced at her breasts. Who hasn't grown? Your son didn't even blink when he saw them last time, all right? Throwing her phone on the table, Kelowna Shinryu's gaze landed on the conference room below. Then, she yawned, thinking that she probably didn't need to come to tomorrow's conference. At this moment, there were some strange sounds coming from the conference room. The entire conference room fell silent as if something had happened. Long Shiro frowned. She saw the conference room's big screen suddenly turn black. A few seconds later, the screen lit up again. A man wearing a mask engraved with a moon pattern appeared in front of the screen. What happened? Who is this? Just when everyone thought this was a special program, the two tower masters of the Magician Association, Red Flame and Ice Han, suddenly stood up. They were too familiar with the outfit of the man on the screen. The member of the Wu Club, who attacked the Magician Association headquarters that day, was dressed like this. Everyone, this is the first time we meet. Let me introduce myself. It was a voice that had been processed. They couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. They only heard the Moon Mask slowly say, "You can call me Moon Seat. I'm from the Michael Club." Sure enough, Red Flame and Ice Han frowned at the same time. Fire Cloud Evil God frowned. Long Shiro frowned. Some transcendents who vaguely knew the existence of this club also frowned. I'll announce a few things. Moon's Seat directly said, "The New World Alliance will be officially established today. The headquarters of the Alliance will be in Oceania. As for the list of member states, I don't think I need to explain it in detail." In an instant, the conference room of the Transcendent Summit was dead silent. The list of member states. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They knew why so many Transcendents were absent from today's meeting. Those guys had joined the New World Alliance. The second thing is that we plan to create a paradise for Transcendents. ######### PS. I also drank some wine. Go to sleep, good night. Chapter 2048. The second thing is that we intend to create a paradise for extraordinaries. The end of all things is evolution, and extraordinaries are the direction of human evolution. We welcome all friends who are committed to the development of extraordinaries to join us. Poaching. It was a blatant attempt to poach people. Although the New World Alliance did not announce the benefits and obligations of any of its members, and only said that it was to explore the path of evolution, the actions of the Kelowna Authority during the Extraordinary Summit meeting were clearly meant to poach people. Moreover, the New World Alliance had clearly poached many people. Today, more than a quarter of the delegates were absent, and most of them had become the first batch of people to join the New World Alliance. This was probably premeditated, or else a quarter of the delegates would not be absent at the summit meeting. However, when did the New World Alliance begin to deploy all of this? There was not even a single leak of information, which was really surprising. At the summit meeting, where the representatives of Underwater City were, Riaz and Lyoga could not help but look at each other. They almost simultaneously thought of the first day of the summit meeting, the young man who called himself Gongsun Jishui and contacted Underwater City in private. During the conversation on that day, Gongsun Jishui had vaguely revealed his tone of trying to rope in Underwater City. It seems that Gongsun Jishui wanted to rope us into the New World Alliance that day. The possibility is more than 80%. In the Spirit Black Room, the Prince of Underwater City and the Witch of Underwater City were whispering. In the venue, everyone was also whispering, because the seat of the moon projected on the big screen gave too little information. Third, the venue suddenly fell silent, and everyone's eyes fell on the big screen. Seat of the Moon's voice slowly sounded. The New World Alliance has only one purpose, and that is that extraordinaries should be above everything else. In an instant, several gazes in the venue focused at the same time, and the expressions of the extraordinaries changed slightly, but they quickly suppressed it and became silent. Because the wording of should be was very subtle. Then, New World Alliance, sorry to disturb you. Seat of the Moon's voice finally sounded, with a hint of a smile. At the same time, we are here to congratulate the establishment of the Extraordinary Association today. Following the last message, the big screen instantly dimmed. When it returned to normal, it was already showing the live broadcast of the summit meeting. Fire Cloud Evil God instantly exhaled. It was the World Extraordinary Association, not the Extraordinary Association. The difference between the two words, world, was like the difference between heaven and earth. The former was a worldwide organization, while the latter could only be reduced to a regional organization. It was meant to tear the soon-to-be-established association apart from the world. Fire Cloud Evil God glanced forward, seeing the unnatural expressions on the representatives' faces. He sighed inwardly, knowing that today's summit meeting could no longer continue. Everyone, let's pause today's meeting. Without saying anything else, the evil god of Fire Cloud had his people turn off the live broadcast for the day. As for the local media, they were arranged to leave as well. However, the representatives of the various countries in the venue did not leave. They were discussing, but what exactly they were discussing and what they were discussing was probably not something that could be casually revealed to others. Renziling glanced at the closed door of the conference center. At this time, the various media did not leave immediately. Instead, they waited quietly outside the conference center so that they could get first-hand information when the door of the conference center opened. I'm afraid we'll have to wait for a long time. Let's work overtime. Auntie Ren shook her head and sent a short message to Xiaoxi, saying that because of work, she could not go over at night and that she was sorry. Then I'll go order lunch. Lizzie took the initiative to say. Renziling did not have the mood to complain about Lizzie at this time, and just nodded. Hotel. After turning off the TV that had been switched to an advertisement program, Mr. Poulin picked up a cup of hot water and slowly drank it while blowing on it. He used to drink cold water or ice water, but these days he was used to drinking plain water. He heard that the effect of soaking a herb called wolfberry in plain water was better? At this time, Mr. Poulin looked at the red-haired girl beside him, Riaz. It was still the very selling female high school uniform with thin black stockings. Since the end of the Power Conference, this girl from the secret society had been following him. You seem to be a little strange about this new world? Mr. Poulin suddenly said. Because he noticed one thing, that was, when the Seat of the Moon appeared, claimed to be from the Michael Club, and announced the establishment of the New World Alliance, Riaz's expression obviously changed a little. It was surprise, not doubt, and even a little realization later. Facing Mr. Poulin's question, Riaz pondered for a moment before slowly saying, Since you promised to be a recorder, it doesn't matter if I tell you some things, you can come in contact with them in the future anyway. Mr. Poulin sat down obediently. Riaz said in a crisp voice, This New World Alliance also existed in other subworlds. Moreover, every time the New World Alliance appears, it also means that the world will welcome the end. Mr. Poulin did not have much of a reaction to the end, but he was curious about the connection between the New World Alliance. You mean, this Star Alliance is an organization that spans across different subworlds? Riaz shook her head. The New World Alliance is not, but the one behind it, the Michael Club, might be. Might be. Because there is not enough evidence to prove that they are the same organization, maybe they just have overlapping names. After all, before they are completely unified, Poulin can have countless of them. Mr. Poulin thought for a while, then asked tentatively, Are you going to tell me about this club? Of course. Riaz nodded. The secret society has always been investigating the actions of the Michael Club. or else we wouldn't have so much information about the New World Alliance and the Club behind it. Since the New World Alliance and the Michael Club have appeared in this subworld as a recorder under the secret society, it is naturally necessary for you to record everything and find the source. Sounds troublesome. Mr. Poulin shook his head. I suddenly feel like resigning. Riaz suddenly sneered. What do you think the secret society is? You can join and leave as you please. Teacher Poulin smiled and didn't mention this matter again. Instead, he rubbed the space between his eyebrows and said slowly, You said that every time a new world appears, it will bring about the end of the subworld. Behind the New World Alliance, there must be the shadow of the Michael Club. That is to say, the appearance of this club will bring about the end of the world. Then, why is it doing this? This is also one of the answers we need to find, Riaz said seriously. Based on our long observation, we found that in the history of the different subworlds that exist in the Michael Club, it all appeared out of nowhere, and the first to appear must be the guy who calls himself the Fool, Riaz said with a straight face. The Fool? What's his purpose? Riaz shook her head. We don't know, but I'm afraid it's not for the unification of the legends. Because when the world comes to an end, the legends will be destroyed. This is self-destruction. But with so many, the Fool, he doing the same thing, only when a super strong person wants to unify all the legends would they choose to do the same thing in a large number of subworlds and spread their own legends. This, the Fool, seems to be quite contradictory to you, right? Mr. Poulin seemed to have noticed something. Riaz said, In my opinion, the Fool is more like the agent of the will of the subworld, or rather, the wielder of the end of the civilization. What do you mean? Riaz said, When the civilization of each subworld reaches its peak, it will collapse. The world will be destroyed, and then a new civilization will be born. The destruction of one subworld after another also means the birth of one subworld after another. And the subworld that has this club must have reached the end of its civilization. Mr. Poulin frowned. According to what you said, our current subworld has reached its end? Riaz shook her head. That's hard to say. Mr. Poulin said directly, Tell me about it. Riaz said, Based on what I saw, the records of the previous scribes of this subworld, this civilization should be far from reaching its end. Because the technological civilization here still has a lot of potential to be unearthed. But the strange thing is, this civilization is clearly on the path of science, but there are a lot of supernatural systems at the same time, so overall it looks very chaotic. You said chaotic, right? Yes, I said it. Riaz looked up and said, Looking at the countless subworlds in the dimensional void, most of the subworld civilizations are on a single path. Even if there are mixed paths occasionally, it should be two similar paths that complement each other. But this world is different, it's too chaotic, there are too many legends here, extreme, and the upper limit is very high. Most importantly, the underwater city that was supposed to be the previous civilization has been preserved until now, and the whole world can still develop steadily until now under the collision of so many different power systems. It's a stitched monster. But since the Club has appeared and successfully created the New World Alliance, according to past practice, this civilization is indeed likely to meet its end. If you say that, Earthling will cry, Mr. Poulin said directly. And too empirical. Riaz sighed. You just need to remember these things. You will gradually understand more things in the future. Also, I will arrange for you to meet another scribe in the short term. The two of you can discuss the areas that you are responsible for. What about you? Mr. Poulin could not help but ask curiously. I will have other arrangements, Riaz said calmly. And remember one thing, I'm your boss now. What I do is not up to you to tell me what to do. Mr. Poulin blinked and said, Do I still need to introduce my student to you? Riaz suddenly showed an exasperated expression and glared at Mr. Poulin. Mr. Poulin thought that the girl was quite cute when she was angry. The thin black socks were also very pleasing to the eye. At this time, Riaz suddenly asked, "Do you really have a way to introduce me?" Mr. Poulin opened his mouth and then smiled bitterly. "I'm just bragging, don't take it seriously." Riaz looked deeply at Mr. Poulin and then said calmly, "You can go out, I want to rest." Transcendent Summit Conference Center. The media guarding the door could not get any information from the transcendent delegations that left later. Because when they appeared, these delegates directly asked the people from the Kelowna Authority to clear the place, then they got in the car and left. There was no room for interviews. However, these delegates who left all looked solemn. It seemed that this closed-door discussion did not go well. The transcendent delegations returned to their respective hotels in silence, in front of the hotel assigned by the Black Order. As soon as they got out of the car, a few black-robed nuns immediately came forward. "Master Lamias." Lamias's face was still a little pale, and the tiredness in her eyes was quite strong. She only woke up on the second day of the kidnapping case. During the Power Conference, the Shinryu of Kelowna was very harsh. "I heard that I even got the title of Top 3? How ironic. Let's go up first." Lamias nodded and signaled for everyone to follow. As soon as they returned to the room, a black-robed nun came forward and said with a serious expression, "Master Lamias, here is an unsigned mail that suddenly appeared in the room. It's for you." Lamias immediately opened the mail. However, she only opened the envelope and looked inside, but did not take out the document inside. She saw the words, "New World," printed on the document. The chief of the Black Order pondered for a moment, then directly sealed the envelope and said indifferently, "I'll take a look at it later. That fellow, has he woken up?" "He has woken up, but—" The black-robed nun hesitated for a moment, then said with an unnatural expression, "But his emotions are not very stable." "He's cursing me," Lamias said indifferently. "We have already sealed his mouth," the black-robed nun quickly said. Lamias sat down and waved her hand. "Bring him here, I have something to talk to him about alone." The black-robed nuns left. Taking advantage of the empty space, Lamias still did not take out the document in the mail. She did not need to look at it to know what was in the mail. This was actually an olive branch from the New World Alliance. However, Lamias was not very interested in the New World Alliance for the time being. In her opinion, the potential of the Transcendent Association was obviously greater. As for the reason, there was no reason, it was purely a kind of intuition, a woman's sixth sense, which was also a sixth sense developed through psyche combat. There were only 3 things she was curious about now. First, who was the one who wanted to kidnap her after the Power Conference? Second, who was the one who saved her in the kidnapping case? Third, Satyr. Especially the matter about Satyr. At the scene of the Power Conference, Lamias used Phantom Demon Emperor Fist to make Satyr self-destruct. She completely understood the cause and effect of how Satyr could survive until now after the destruction of the Twilight of the Gods in the Holy Dominion. However, what Lamias cared about was not Satyr, the guy who survived from that era. If Satyr did not appear again, Lamias would not recall the memory of him. What she cared about was the way Satyr returned to the modern world. He was summoned from the world of the dead by a black uncle wizard. Then, could it be that through the world of the dead's aura on Satyr, it could be used to locate and enter the world of the dead in reverse? As for the world of the dead, was it only connected to this world, or? Chapter 2049. Ever since she escaped, a feeling of nowhere to go and nowhere to escape began to grow in Lamias's heart. This feeling was not strong at first, but as the time she spent in the modern world extended, the feeling of being suppressed by something became more and more intense. She even had the idea of breaking away from the world in her dreams. Although she was sealed in the crystal wall, she did not stop cultivating her battle will. But in fact, her battle will had stopped progressing since a long time ago. She spent a lot of time on it, but it did not even change the nature of her battle will. As for the quantity, it did not increase much either. The world limited her, or it could be said that she had reached the limit allowed by the world. No, it's far from the limit. Kelowna Shinryu is far stronger than me now, but I have indeed reached the end of my battle will. The spark of thought suddenly lit up in Lamia's spiritual world. What I have reached should be the first limit. There is probably an invisible second limit in this world. Only Kelowna Shinryu has reached this stage. The strong knew their destiny. At this moment, Lord Lamia's, the person has been brought. Lamia's spark of thought was instantly extinguished. She responded calmly, "Let him in." Satyr was tied up and gagged at the same time. He was placed on a chair at this time, staring at Lamia's with resentment. "I heard that after you woke up, you have been scolding me, right?" Lamia's removed the shackles from Satyr's mouth. "But I don't want to apologize for what I did in the past." Lamia's, "Even if I die, even if I am dragged into the abyss of the underworld and burned by the endless flames of hell, I will curse you, curse you. The underworld is long gone, isn't it?" Lamia's pulled a chair and sat with her legs crossed. "Not only the underworld, but the sanctuary and Mount Pantheon have long been destroyed. Today, I am afraid that you are the only warrior of the goddess left." Satyr gritted his teeth and remained silent. Lamia's ran her fingers through her hair. "How about I make a deal with you? Help me do something, and I'll find a way to help you heal your the injuries on your body." Satyr sneered. Lamia's continued, "You can only rely on yourself when it comes to spiritual wounds. However, with the technology of the Black Order, it's easy to repair physical wounds. At the very least, you have to live like a man, a warrior with a bright future." Satyr remained silent. It was impossible for him to let go of this hatred. But if he wanted revenge, he needed freedom. Despite the anger in his heart, Satyr knew very well that he could only endure the humiliation and feign civility with Lamia's, just like how he was willing to become the exclusive property of a certain demon lord in order to survive in the world of the dead. Everything was for revenge. "You seem to have made up your mind, right?" Lamia's said calmly. "What do you want me to help you with?" Lamia's smiled and said, "First of all, how much do you know about the world of the dead?" "Your purpose is the world of the dead. You want to go to the world of the dead?" Satyr frowned. "Go through me and enter in reverse?" Lamia's was a little surprised, but not too surprised. She nodded directly. "Tell me more about the world of the dead first." "Untie me first," Satyr said calmly. "I need an equal deal and food." Soon, a black-robed nun brought some food and Satyr was untied. However, at this time, Lamia's also had a very exaggerated silver pistol in her hand. The pistol was casually placed on her thigh, but the muzzle was always aimed at Satyr's chest. "You can introduce it now," Lamia's said with a chuckle. "As the name suggests, the world of the dead is a world of the dead," Satyr thought at this time and said, "but it is different from the underworld we know. The people in the world of the dead are already dead, but at the same time they are also living people." "What do you mean?" "In the world of the dead, I will feel hungry, weak, injured, and need to rest, but at the same time I can also practice fighting spirit. Everything is no different from when I was in the sanctuary." "Because you fell into it from the saint level?" Lamia's tried to explain. "In fact, you didn't enter the world of the dead through death." Satyr shook his head. "Those who originally lived in the world of the dead, like me, will feel hungry and need to rest. So, it's just called the world of the dead, but it doesn't really collect people who are already dead. It collects the dead, except for me, all the people who are already dead. It should be said that the people I have always met are already dead." "Oh! I met a few people I knew, one of them was even my former teacher," Satyr said seriously, "but they have already died in battle. It's not the underworld that collects the dead, but the dead are still alive at the same time?" Lamia's muttered, "Interesting world, is there more?" You mentioned that the one who imprisoned you was a demon lord. How powerful is this demon lord in the world of the dead? That guy's territory is not even in the world of the dead, Satyr shook his head and said, but even so, that guy's territory is very large. How big is the world of the dead? After I escaped from that guy's territory, I walked for a long time, but I only entered a few similar territories. I'm afraid it's not even 100th or even 1,000th of the world of the dead. I have never seen such a vast world, its size is even beyond my knowledge. Lamia's actually knew a lot of secrets. Although she couldn't move after being sealed in the crystal wall, she was regarded as their ancestor by the Socius God clan. Thanks to these guys from the Socius God clan who kept inquiring about the outside world, Lamia's actually knew a lot of secret. Especially after the holy kingdom of the destroyed Greek gods was transformed into the inhuman territory, she inquired about all kinds of miscellaneous information. If the modern world was the main world, then the inhuman domain was a uniquely small world that was attached to the edge of the main world. It was a fragment of the main world's history that was cut out from the main world's poneglyph. At first, she thought that the world of the dead might be a similar fragment world, but it didn't seem to be the case. Even if it was a fragment world evolved from a fragment of history, it couldn't be larger than the main world. The world of the dead, that was much larger than the main world? Do you know how this world of the dead was formed? Satyr shook his head. I said that I haven't even explored 1,000th of the land. In fact, the world of the dead is a very empty place. If you leave the city, it's hard to meet a stranger outside. After I escaped, I was wanted and couldn't enter the city. I could only hide in the wild. So, you are much less useful than I thought. Lamias chuckled. Satyr said indifferently, even if I don't know much, I have lived in it for many years. I have the experience of surviving in the world of the dead that you can't imagine. Lamias suddenly said, you can come back through the summoning ritual. That is to say, the creatures of the world of the dead can also. Well, the tribal wizard who summoned you, I think I can talk to him. That guy can only summon the lowest dead in the wild through the ritual. This kind of dead definitely doesn't know as much as I do. Satyr said with a sneer. I need more useful information. Lamias shook her head. Satyr gritted his teeth. I lived in the castle of the demon lord for a while. That demon and it occasionally revealed some secrets about the world of the dead. The low dead in the wild definitely doesn't know more secrets than a demon lord. For example, Satyr knew that if he didn't throw out some useful information, it would be difficult to convince Lamias. He thought for a while and said, I heard that the world of the dead is essentially a world of losers. These losers came to the world of the dead because they failed to find something. It also said that in fact, the world of the dead may be the portal before finding that thing. Something? What is it? You know this kind of thing, right? Satyr didn't say anything. Lamias slowly pulled the trigger of the silver pistol in her hand. The cartridge turned. Satyr didn't respond. Lamias suddenly stood up and said casually, let's call it a day. I think you are tired. I will ask someone to send you to rest. Satyr, who was sent away, was much quieter and no longer cursed. At this time, Lamias took out the document in the mysterious mail and read it carefully. A black-robed nun was serving her at this time, but she didn't look sideways. After a long time, Lamias slowly sighed. The delegation of the tribe that summoned Satyr seems to be in the list of absentees in today's summit meeting? Lady Lamias, do you want to find the delegation of this tribe? The black-robed nun responded quickly. Well, they should have gone to the New World Alliance, or they are still on the way. Lamias said directly, let's see if we can find them. The wizards of this tribe are not powerful, but wizards have always been quite strange, so we need to pay more attention. I will arrange it right away. Seeing the black-robed nun hurried out, Lamias fell into deep thought again. If she really couldn't find them, she was afraid that she could only go to the New World Alliance, in person. After all, the ritual used to summon satyrs should still be in the hands of that old wizard, Black Uncle. If she wanted to reverse the ritual, she naturally needed to use that old wizard. Only the world of the losers? Lamias muttered to herself, what does that mean? Because they were 7 time zones apart, it was already late at night in the seaside town of Britain. However, Wizard Trizang said, why sleep? He's only 18 years old and has plenty of energy. Get up and have fun. Thus, Boss Luo, who was gradually becoming more lively and cheerful, snapped his fingers. Instantly, a crack appeared above Wizard Trizang's head, and books were thrown at him. Soon, Wizard Trizang was piled up in a mountain of books. Not only were there books, but there were also some DVDs and the like. Wizard Trizang curiously grabbed a book and flipped it open, looking it up and down for a long time. Only then did he realize that he had flipped the book upside down. Wizard Trizang said shyly. He didn't recognize any of the words in the book, let alone their meaning. Boss Luo said that these were simplified Chinese words that only appeared in Kelowna's modern era. This is called Journey to the West. Boss Luo casually picked up a hardcover book. Other than the words Journey to the West on the cover, there was also the words Collector's Edition. No. Wizard Trizang shook his head fiercely and said, I don't understand. Boss Luo smiled casually and waved his finger. A ray of light shot into Wizard Trizang's forehead. Wizard can now easily read these simplified Chinese words. These are all stories about Journey to the West, as well as some derivative works. I think it should be enough for Wizard to pass the time. Wizard Trizang grabbed another DVD and looked at it. Good, this time, he really understood it. Crazy Love Sage. About Wukong? He grabbed another DVD. On the cover was written, Journey to the West Epilogue, No Ghosts and Animals Edition. There's even an epilogue? Wizard Trizang grabbed a few more books and looked at the covers. He immediately exclaimed with interest, these are all written by later generations. The story of the little monk's journey to the West? Boss Luo smiled and said, here, Wizard should first appear in the story, then there are these stories and works. Wizard Trizang didn't seem to hear this. He took off his kasaya and wrapped up all the books and DVDs on the ground. Then, he carried them into the room. Master, shall we let Wizard live here temporarily? Miss Maid appeared. Boss Luo said casually, is there a better place than here? Miss Maid shook her head. Boss Luo looked at the time and said, then let's leave it at that for now. Eve should be able to take care of Wizard. Also, for the time being, let Eve and Adam disconnect from the modern world's internet. Miss Maid smiled and said, I've already given the order. Boss Luo said again, since you've agreed to your student's request and let a night mechanism gain a foothold in the Security Council, find a time to deal with it. I'll go back and deal with it personally. Miss Maid nodded. You go back first. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Lady Nan has probably waited for a long time. As for me, I want to go to New World Alliance, to take a look. Miss Maid raised her eyebrows slightly and said softly, Master, are you interested in New World Alliance? Boss Luo smiled and said, you can't say this casually. I'm just curious. If I'm really interested, I'm afraid I'll make things difficult for Araya. This child actually has it tough. Then, Boss Luo added, this script should be finalized. At this moment, a wizard's roar came from the room. TSK. This old Wu is really a good-for-nothing. He actually wrote that I've wrongly married the sister of the Queen of Womanland. Bullsh *T. Isn't Womanland beautiful? This phrase is well written. My sister of the Queen is definitely beautiful. In front of the window, the wizard scratched his head and was very happy. The boss and Miss Maid smiled at each other and disappeared into thin air. Chapter 2050. Both Firecloud, Evil God, and Long Shirua had a notice about the New World Alliance. It was not because the Kelowna agency's intelligence system was so advanced that it had collected a lot of information in just a few hours. This was actually downloaded from the internet. Moreover, anyone could easily download this notice. It was widely spread on major platforms around the world. Any transcendent, as long as they had this notice, could join the New World Alliance. Even ordinary people can join? When Shinryu of Kelowna saw this, she began to frown and muttered, "These guys, what are they trying to do? Rebooting the world's political system?" What's even more incredible is that Oceania's Australia has directly announced that it will join the New World Alliance. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head. "I didn't expect this club to have such a terrifying infiltration into the country of ordinary people." But considering the geographical location of Oceania, it was soon relieved. Oceania's geographical location was relatively independent and isolated, unlike Europa and Kelowna, which were completely connected plates, and Oceania's transcendent power had always been a rather poor type. Fire Cloud Evil God thought for a moment and said, "I've arranged for a few agents to start to infiltrate the New World Alliance, but it will take time to find out anything." Shinryu of Kelowna did not seem to be worried about the appearance of the New World Alliance. Instead, she said noncommittally, "But what do they want to do? They can't step into Kelowna." "Of course, after all, we have you guarding Kelowna." Fire Cloud Evil God nodded. Long Shiro rolled her eyes. Her confidence now did not come from Shinryu's power, but because she knew that in Kelowna, in the forbidden city of Kelowna, there was a woman called Ren Xiling. She actually hoped that the group of demons and ghosts outside would be more stubborn and be taken away by some angry profiteer. "Peace. What's that?" Long Shirua suddenly pointed at a bag of things on the table and asked. Fire Cloud Evil God raised his eyebrows and said, "There were several kidnappings targeting the top 3 of the Power Conference. There are some clues here." 3 idiots? Long Shirua opened her mouth subconsciously. Fire Cloud Evil God acted as if he didn't hear anything. He took out a black metal mask from the bag and slowly said, "This is the mask that the bandits wore in the current era based on the image that the female knight from A Night Mechanism drew." "Let me have a look." Long Shirua was startled. The Fire Cloud Evil God subconsciously asked, "Lord Long, could it be that you have discovered something about this mask?" Kelowna Shinryu took the mask in her hand and observed it carefully. She hesitated and said, "Before the summit meeting began, I went to the ghost city where the sound of flute was heard. Was it for the Ghost Gate seal?" Fire Cloud Evil God nodded and said, "Every year, the Taoist sect master Bai Jie would also bring people there. The Ghost Gate guarded by the sect master was wide open." Long Shirua said, "This time there were some accidents. A group of mysterious people suddenly broke in and almost destroyed the Ghost Gate seal. They were also people wearing this kind of mask." "Were there any survivors?" Fire Cloud Evil God asked directly. "No. I heard that this group of people directly self-destructed after they failed. The only things that could be found were some fragments. So, the people who kidnapped Farrell and the others are the same group of people who attacked the Ghost City." Fire Cloud Evil God was puzzled. "What is their purpose?" "How would I know?" Kelowna Shinryu said angrily, "I'm not omniscient and omnipotent." "Well, the administration will focus on following up on this matter." Fire Cloud Evil God thought for a moment and said, "Now that the world is changing, I can't tell if these things are the result of the same force or multiple forces." Long Shirua suddenly asked, "By the way, do you have any information about your disciple?" Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head. Long Shirua recalled and said, "When I fought with Yen Xiaoxi that day, I found something wrong with him. It seemed that he was not simply being controlled. Yen Xiaoxi was in a very strange state at that time. He gave me the feeling that he was not human at all." "What exactly did he go through?" Fire Cloud Evil God said, The reason why Xiaoxi was covered in a black shell at that time was probably because of an experiment by the administration called cloak. This technology was developed by Dr. Zhao based on the all essences substance that we obtained from the Penglai treasure vault. It can greatly increase the strength of an individual. Kelowna Shinryu frowned and said, "So, the all essences is still with Yan Xiaoxi?" "Not really." Fire Cloud Evil God deliberated and said, "This substance is very mysterious. It can change into any known substance, but once it changes, it cannot be reverted back to its original state. So, the all essences should not have been leaked, unless the person who captured Xiaoxi has mastered the means to reverse the all essences. Don't forget, other than Yan Xiaoxi, Dr. Zhao was also captured." Kelowna Shinryu said seriously, "It may not be easy to interrogate a transcendent, but it is not difficult to interrogate a normal scientific lunatic. We have also considered this." Fire Cloud Evil God sighed and said, "Unfortunately, there are no clues now. At present, we can only hope that no one can reverse extract the all essences." Long Shiro thought for a moment and said, "How do you plan to hold the meeting tomorrow?" After the announcement of the New World Alliance, the summit meeting was directly stopped. The transcendent representatives discussed for a few hours and reached a preliminary consensus. That was, those who stayed would continue to establish the World Transcendent Association. The Magician Association and the Club could be considered as mortal enemies. It was impossible for them to have any contact with the New World Alliance. This was because during the closed-door meeting, Bing Han and the Crimson Blaze Tower's attitude was very firm. "Open it as usual." Fire Cloud Evil God said calmly, "It is it, and we are us." Long Shirua nodded, then suddenly took out a map and spread it in front of Fire Cloud Evil God. "This is the map of the Forbidden City?" Fire Cloud Evil God was confused. "Lord Long, what do you mean?" The true dragon of the Divine Land took out a red pen and drew a big red circle around the city of Abstinence on the map. She said expressionlessly, "Special District of the Demon Clan." Fire Cloud Evil God couldn't help but frown and said hesitantly, "Are you serious? There's no place more suitable than this area." Kelowna Shinryu said bluntly, "Those shifter guys are from different places, and they have different living habits. It's not suitable to force them to stay in the same place. But I can directly transform a large number of satellite cities around the Forbidden City. I can suppress them. A few years, a dozen years, or even a few decades is not a problem. It's enough for them to slowly integrate with each other. Anyway, the spiritual energy density is about the same everywhere. There's no problem of not being able to cultivate. I can't promise you right away." Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head and said, "This kind of thing can't be decided by the administration. It needs the approval of the higher-up. I didn't ask for a few months or half a year to complete the construction of the special district." Kelowna Shinryu said calmly, "I have a lot of time, so I can wait. But I can't delay. If those in power in the capital want to delay me, I'll go visit them. Anyway, the capital isn't forbidden, so you can't stop me." Fire Cloud Evil God smiled bitterly. "It's so lonely to be invincible." "Speak human language." Kelowna Shinryu stared at him. Fire Cloud Evil God said helplessly, "I think this should work." "That's all for today." Kelowna Shinryu nodded with satisfaction. "Inform me as soon as there's news from the New World Alliance." Fire Cloud Evil God suddenly asked tentatively, "Lord Long, since there's still time before tomorrow's meeting, why don't you go to the Star World Alliance and visit them?" How could she have time? She still had to go back to being Xiaoxi, okay? She still had to take a taxi out of the city to transform. So busy. "Lady Nan, so you're here." In front of the door, the witch from the World Academy was squatting. She was also carrying a small bag with pineapple buns in it. When Miss Maid appeared, Nan Xiaonan was eating a pineapple bun. It was the third one. She had been waiting here for a long time. No, a whole day. She was so hungry that she had to buy some bread to eat. It was such a bully for a newbie. Boss and his wife. Miss Yu Yi, you're not here. Nan Xiaonan quickly stood up. I'm here to report today. Why don't you just go away? Miss Maid nodded, opening the door and entering the room. Nan Xiaonan was familiar with this room. She even lived here for a while. It was emotionless. But she didn't expect that when she came back again, her identity was so different from before. Miss Rin doesn't seem to be here. Nan Xiaonan took the initiative to say at this time. Miss Maid said indifferently, she and Lizzie will work overtime tonight. They should spend the night in the office and won't come back tonight. I've already informed them. Well, Nan Xiaonan nodded and then asked tentatively, by the way, where's the boss? Lady Nan. Miss Maid suddenly looked at her. Nan Xiaonan was stunned subconsciously, and then she was inexplicably flustered. She said nervously, I'm here. Master can ask us everything. Miss Maid said expressionlessly, but we can't, remember? Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth and then nodded, yes, I remember. Wait for me, I'll prepare something. Miss Maid smiled, turning and walking into the room. Nan Xiaonan sat down awkwardly. When facing Miss Maid alone, the pressure was almost 10 times greater than when the boss was next to her. After a while, Miss Maid came out of the room. Nan Xiaonan quickly stood up. Miss Maid said, Lady Nan, there are several kinds of employees in the shop run by the master. One is called Black Soul Envoy. As a Black Soul Envoy, their life and death are controlled by the master, and they will never have the ability to betray the master. Of course, if they do the work well, they will naturally get many unexpected benefits. The most important point is that even if the Black Soul Envoy is dead, they can be resurrected in the shop. Nan Xiaonan was shocked. Resurrected? No one can really exterminate the Black Soul Envoy. Miss Maid said indifferently, except the master. What about other kinds? Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said, the other kind is actually the Black Soul Envoy. Miss Maid sat down slowly and said, there are 2 kinds of Black Soul Envoys. One is to look for business opportunities for the shop, and the other is to collect debts for the shop. The debt collector will also accept some tasks of force. Of course, we don't forbid the debt collector to do the work of the first kind of Black Soul Envoy, as long as it's within the scope of his ability. So, the debt collector has more freedom. Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said, besides, the other kind is just set up by the master. Miss Maid smiled and said, branch manager. Nan Xiaonan's eyes suddenly brightened, and she waited for the next part. Miss Maid said indifferently, I believe you have some guesses in your mind. Yes, the position of branch manager is a new position after the master promised to accept you. Of course, in essence, it is still a Black Soul Envoy. Nan Xiaonan cursed in her heart. Just say it directly, no matter what you do, you have to sign the slave contract first. Boss, wants me to take over the position of branch manager? Nan Xiaonan asked cautiously. No, the master didn't ask for that. Miss Maid said casually. He just asked me to tell you that there are 3 choices, and you can choose any one of them. Can I think about it? Of course. Miss Maid nodded. Then, before you decide which job you want to choose, you have to consider another thing, whether you want to become a Black Soul Envoy. This is the last chance that the master gives you to choose. Miss Maid waved her hand as she said that. In the small living room, a black cabinet that made Nan Xiaonan tremble slowly rose from the floor. This is the Ark of the Covenant. If you agree, please put half of your soul into the Ark of the Covenant. Nan Xiaonan had a flash of inspiration. The Black Soul Envoy can't die because it can be reborn with the help of the Ark of the Covenant, right? She looked at the open black cabinet and the lights inside. She couldn't count the number of lights at once, and the shock in her heart was indescribable. But why are there so many lights that don't light up? Of course, it is because the owner blew them out. Miss Maid said indifferently, of course, I only have the ability to keep the Ark of the Covenant, not to blow out the life lights. Why are you telling me this? Nan Xiaonan looked at Miss Maid in surprise. It can't be because I said something nice, right? Miss Maid chuckled. I will tell every Black Soul envoy who puts a light about this at the appropriate time, in order to make the envoys more respectful of our master. Sure enough, it was not because she said something nice, but because it was a routine. Nan Xiaonan nodded inwardly. That was more like it. But in fact, Nan Xiaonan was indeed hesitating at this time. Splitting half of her soul into a light and storing it in the Ark of the Covenant, although she could be reborn from the Ark of the Covenant after death, her soul would indeed become incomplete. For a creature like her who had stepped into the dimensional void, an incomplete soul meant that it would be difficult to continue to improve in the future. She might stay at this stage forever. This was the opposite of the freedom Nan Xiaonan wanted. You can continue to improve yourself. Miss Maid seemed to have seen through her and said directly, the power of a Black Soul envoy can be improved through performance. In theory, there is no limit. No limit? Nan Xiaonan opened her eyes wide in disbelief. Miss Maid pointed at one of the lights at the top of the Ark of the Covenant and said calmly, Do you know who this light belongs to? Nan Xiaonan looked at it subconsciously. When her eyes focused on this light, she felt a huge wave in her spiritual sea, as if her spiritual world would collapse at any time. She couldn't help but lower her head, unable to look directly at it. While she was shocked, Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but think of a saying, You can't look directly at a true God. Who is it? Nan Xiaonan asked in a trembling voice. Miss Maid folded her hands on her lap and said slowly, Me. Lady Nan was petrified and didn't dare to speak. I'll give you full marks for this. About half an hour later, Nan Xiaonan gritted her teeth and put her light into the Ark of the Covenant with trembling hands. Chapter 2051. After the closed-door meeting, Mr. Gareth returned to the hotel early and had a video conference with the Queen of Britain. The discussion was about the New World Alliance, and also about the news of Australia and Oceania joining the New World Alliance. It was more about the content of Australia joining the New World Alliance, because nominally, the Queen of Britain was also the monarch of Australia. Of course, today, Australia was a completely independent country. However, the Queen of Britain still retained the power to appoint the Governor of Australia. However, the Governor of Australia had no real power. The Knight mechanism used to be huge, and Britain used to be one of the world's overlords. The video call between Mr. Gareth and Her Majesty took nearly 20 minutes. After that, Mr. Gareth walked out with a tired face. Lancelot was sitting in the hall outside the room at this time. She did not participate in the conversation between the Queen and Gareth. The Queen means that she will persuade the Cabinet in the near future to officially sever the unclear relationship with Australia. Mr. Gareth sat down directly. The so-called British Federation is just a system in name. If Britain wants to restore its past glory, it needs to give up this glory that is no longer decadent. Lancelot just nodded. As one of the 12 knights arranged by the Knight operation, to protect the Queen, she wouldn't participate in any political matters. She wouldn't even ask about the internal business of the Knight operation. She was the Queen's personal guard. This generation of Lancelot was like this. She could almost be regarded as an independent individual. We need to end the meeting in Kelowna as soon as possible and return to Britain. Mr. Gareth said in a low voice. Farrell was taken away. This matter has a great impact on the Knight mechanism. It's a pity that our performance in the Power Conference was not very good. Even if we barely entered the Security Council, we have almost no right to speak. But it's not a loss. Lancelot suddenly frowned at this time, as if something flew past her eyes. It was a black butterfly. But Mr. Gareth did not seem to see the butterfly. Lancelot stood up abruptly and walked out with the suitcase containing the ceremonial sword. Where are you going? Gareth asked in surprise. Wait for me here. Lancelot didn't even turn his head as he left the room. Mr. Gareth wanted to chase after them, but after hesitating for a moment, he did not. After Lancelot left the room, she took the elevator and went directly to the highest floor of the hotel. Then she climbed up the fire stairs to the rooftop of the hotel. The moment the iron door was pushed open, Lancelot saw a fluttering black butterfly. The butterfly slowly flew and finally landed on a white jade-like finger. Lancelot didn't hesitate and walked closer. "Why are you looking for me?" Lancelot asked directly. In front of her was Miss Maid. Yi smiled and said, "I'm not the one looking for you. You're the one looking for me. Your queen is looking for me." Lancelot frowned and said indifferently, "It's a pity that the power conference is over. As you can see, the results of the innate mechanism are obviously not good." Miss Maid smiled faintly. "There is no rule that says that if you want to have a foothold in the Transcendental Association's Security Council and have enough right to speak, you must get enough beads in the power conference. Of course, this is also one of the methods." "What other methods are there?" Lancelot frowned and immediately shook her head. "We can't let the power conference reopen. It's meaningless. Kelowna has Shinryu, so she will always be the big winner, unless you guys are involved. The so-called right to speak comes from having enough power." Miss Maid chuckled. "As for power, it has many components. Pure destructive power is power, knowledge is power, information is power. Luck is also a kind of power." Lancelot's eyes flashed with doubt. Miss Maid opened her palm at this time, and in the middle of her palm, there was an old leather cover that was the size of 2 palms turning slowly. "What is this?" Lancelot asked subconsciously. "The method to make the tear of God." Miss Maid smiled and said, "Of course, it's just a simplified version. The full version is not enough with just a ritual sword. However, this is enough for you to have enough right to speak." Tear of God? Lancelot was stunned. This was the first time she heard of this thing. Miss Maid said indifferently, "It appeared at the scene of the power conference. Many people were using it and they were very satisfied with it." Lancelot was stunned at first, and then she was shocked. Although the transcendental representatives from various countries at the scene of the power conference were not good, there was no lack of true elites. They had already realized that at the scene of the power conference, there was indeed a special item that could increase the strength of transcendence in a short period of time, and it did not seem to have many side effects. "How much effect does this simplified version have?" Lancelot asked suddenly. Miss Maid said, "Only about 30% of the effect. This is a simple optimization that is suitable for the most suitable substitute material that can be found in this world. After all, the tear of God, at the power conference, was not its final version. I still don't know how much effect it has." Lancelot shook her head. "The rough data." Miss Maid thought for a while and said, "It should be able to double the user's strength within 10 minutes without any side effects. It can be stacked once, but the effectiveness will be halved, and at the same time, there will be a slight loss of strength." "This is still only a simplified version?" Lancelot looked at Miss Maid inconceivably. No wonder some people could burst out extremely amazing strength at the power conference that day. Unfortunately, the increase of strength does not mean that they are really powerful. However, this cold female knight finally showed some obvious changes in her expression. At this time, the smile on Miss Maid's face became bigger. Lancelot even shuddered subconsciously. She even felt that this mysterious woman seemed to be happy to see the change in her emotions. She even felt that she was being teased. Lancelot quickly restrained her emotions and muttered, "Although the simplified version of Tear of God, you said is amazing, there is a side effect of loss of strength. Besides, this potion alone can give the night mechanism enough say in the Transcendent Association. It doesn't seem to be enough, right? If it's a peaceful era, it may not be enough," Miss Maid said indifferently, "but if it's a war era, I think there won't be a problem of not enough. Am I right, Knight Lancelot?" "War." Lancelot's eyes focused. She almost thought of the New World Alliance. Immediately. Then, let the tear of God become the special supply of the night mechanism. Miss Maid chuckled. If there is such a day when the simplified version of Tear of God can be mass-produced, I will personally come to take the British ceremonial sword. Then, sorry to disturb you. She made an impeccable ladylike bow in front of Lancelot and then disappeared. As the night wind blew, Lancelot felt a little cold. She didn't know if the war mentioned by this mysterious woman would happen or not. Perhaps even this mysterious woman herself didn't have a definite answer? But this was indeed the field that the member states of the Transcendent Association tried to discuss during the closed-door meeting. However, the New World Alliance had just been announced, and there wasn't much information other than that, so the discussion didn't have any substantial result. Taking a deep breath, Lancelot solemnly picked up the book that recorded the potion formula and wanted to open it. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't open the formula. Lancelot couldn't help but frown. What does this mean? War might not happen? Mass production. It can only be mass-produced when it can be opened? If it can't be mass-produced, then what? Questions continued to appear in Lancelot's mind. After a long time, she solemnly put away the formula and then sent a message directly to Mr. Gareth. Gareth, I have something important to do and have to return immediately. I'll leave the following meeting to you. When Mr. Gareth received Lancelot's message, he almost scolded. Didn't you say you would wait for me to come back? You're leaving just like that? I was so obedient. I waited for so long and all I got was a goodbye? Oh, Lancelot is really a woman. A woman? Mr. Gareth sighed heavily. He felt so tired. He felt like he was fighting alone and couldn't hold up a single tree. Everyone didn't want to play with him. Australia. It was late at night. Soldiers in white combat uniforms were shuttling through the streets of the Australian capital. In addition, there were also Australian soldiers. Just a few hours ago, the government led by the Australian Prime Minister announced that Australia had merged into the New World Alliance and established a new government. At the same time, they also announced that the capital of Australia would be handed over to the New World Alliance's military for an indefinite period of time until the new government announced that the takeover would be lifted. Armored vehicles were now roaring in the streets in the middle of the night. The people could only hide in their homes and look uneasily at these big guys wandering on the streets through the windows. At first, the government's actions directly angered the people in the capital. However, the fierce resistance was quickly suppressed after gunshots rang out. It was said that in just 10 minutes, hundreds of corpses of violent people appeared on Porter Street. At this time, the huge helipad was brightly lit. Many military transport planes that were painted silver slowly landed. These transport planes were carrying transcendent delegations that had left the city of abstinence. One of the transport planes had just landed, and a guest on the transport plane seemed to be eager to get off. A figure directly broke open the cabin door, set off a gust of wind, and landed on the helipad. The gust of wind blew a dozen soldiers in white combat uniforms to the ground. That person laughed and said, "Comfortable. Comfortable. The Forbidden City is simply not a place for people to stay." At this time, as if agreeing with this sentence, a powerful aura rose into the sky. It actually caused the transport planes that were lined up to land to sway slightly. In addition to the soldiers in white combat uniforms, there were also a large number of Australian soldiers here. At this time, these soldiers' faces were filled with horror. This transcendent who was moving his muscles laughed even more unscrupulously. Transcendents were no longer a secret. In the past few days they had seen many transcendents, but they all saw them on the screen. It was indeed the first time in their lives that they faced transcendents directly. Fear. At this time, the first transcendent who broke open the cabin door to move his body suddenly exclaimed. At this time, the transcendent's face suddenly became abnormally painful. His hands desperately reached for his neck, as if he wanted to break open something. At the same time, his body began to slowly be pulled up by something. In the end, the first transcendent who broke open the cabin door was stopped in midair by a man wearing a white mask with a sword pattern on his face. He was wearing a black robe and a white mask with a sword pattern on his face. In an instant, the soldiers in white combat uniforms showed fanatical gazes and looked at the black-robed man. They shouted, "The seat of the sword! Praise you! The sharpest sword in the world!" So this is the treasured sword seat of the 26 seats of the clubhouse. The treasured sword of Little Arcana? It seems that he wants to show his strength. There's no problem with showing his strength. If it were me, I would do the same. But don't think of using me as an example. My sword hasn't tasted blood for too long. New World Alliance, I hope we didn't come to the wrong place. The voices of the transcendent delegation were broken and messy. The seat of the sword coldly glanced down. The transcendent in his hand was struggling in pain. But not long after, the seat of the sword's palm directly crushed the transcendent's throat. Then, the corpse was thrown to the ground. It fell right in front of the delegation that the dead transcendent belonged to. The other transcendent in the delegation showed a furious expression and were about to attack. At this time, a treasured sword seat took out a handkerchief and slowly wiped his palm. He said indifferently, "I hope that everyone who comes here is an elite among the extraordinaires. You know how to be humble and courteous. You are talented and self-disciplined talents, not losers who fled all the way from the forbidden city like dogs in the water. Die!" In the delegation that lost a member, a strong man directly roared. The muscles all over his body burst out of his clothes. He turned into a huge tiger man and jumped up. Seat of the treasured sword, didn't even look. Just as the tiger waved its sharp claws and was about to tear him apart, a treasured sword appeared out of thin air and directly pierced through the tiger man's chest, nailing him to the ground. The rest of the transcendents in the delegation were terrified. Dozens of swords shot down like sharp swords. In the end, the swords turned into cages, trapping the few transcendents at the same time. No one dared to stand up for the delegation anymore. The seat of the sword glanced down. Everyone must be tired after coming from afar. The Allies have arranged a place for everyone to rest. Please. They walked past the imprisoned superhumans and did not even look at them. They remained silent. In a luxurious manner in the capital of Australia, the woman was walking slowly in the corridor with a calm expression. The woman seemed to be thinking about something. The followers behind her followed carefully and didn't make any sound. Suddenly, the woman stopped and looked out of the corridor window. Outside, it was a corner of the manor's courtyard. The woman suddenly said, "I don't like this manor." The first follower behind her lowered his head and said, "Your Majesty, this is the best manor we can find now. After all, we just arrived here. Your manor is the best out of all the seats." The woman turned around and looked at the first follower behind her. She said indifferently, "I don't like you either." The first follower was instantly terrified and said with a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, a failure." The woman shook her head and reached out her hand. In an instant, the first follower's body was torn apart. In the end, what scattered on the ground was a pile of metal parts. A piece of gear slowly rolled to the edge of the corner. Even so, the rest of the followers behind the woman still didn't dare to raise their heads. The woman looked at these followers and suddenly sighed. "I once had the most perfect work, but unfortunately, you can all go and clean it up." The attendants immediately responded with a yes. The woman turned around and left. The followers began to clean up the pile of parts on the ground. After a while, the woman came to the door of the manor's study and said to herself, "Well, I have new inspiration. I should be able to make a good work." Saying so, the woman pushed open the door of the study and planned to draw the design in her mind tonight. At this moment, the woman's eyes narrowed. In front of a row of bookshelves by the wall of her study, A young man with black hair and black eyes was standing at this moment. I borrowed a book to read. The young man looked at her with a smile. If you don't mind, I won't read it. Nice to meet you, Your Majesty Catherine the Great. The woman's expression changed slightly, but she quietly closed the door of the study. She looked at the young man standing in front of the bookshelves and slowly walked to the desk and finally sat down. Chapter 2052. Inside the manor, an attendant brought in a cup of tea and stood in front of the door of the study, gently knocking on the door. Hearing the knock, the woman subconsciously glanced at the black-haired youth in front of the bookshelf, then said calmly, "No need, you can leave." After the attendant respectfully responded outside the door, he turned around and left. "He's probably gone far." The woman then turned sideways to size up the black-haired youth, who barged into her study. "Are you the shop's emissary?" the woman asked in silence, then said, "Or are you above the emissary?" Boss Luo also sized up the woman. People with power, regardless of gender, had no problem pursuing youth. The woman maintained her appearance in the best years of a woman's life, and there was even a trace of dignity in her luxurious appearance. She was a woman. "There's someone above the emissary?" Boss Luo was curious. The woman said indifferently, "Isn't that Miss Eleanor above the emissary? I heard that she manages all the emissaries." Boss Luo smiled and said, "Why not the shop owner?" "I've seen the shop owner." The woman said calmly, "You're not him. Besides, even if he's the shop owner, wouldn't he feel that he's lowering his status by coming here personally?" Boss Luo was even more curious. He blinked and asked, "What does the shop owner have to do to not be considered lowering his status?" The woman sneered and said, "That guy lives behind the scenes and controls everyone. It's not that he wants to see anyone, but that people do everything they can to see him, but are afraid to see him. That guy is such an arrogant and reclusive guy." Luo Qiu was surprised by the woman's description of the former shop owner. "Your Majesty seems to be very familiar with our shop owner." "Not really. We've had a few business dealings, that's all." The woman shook her head, then said, "Also, call me Miss Sophia, I'm no longer Your Majesty." Boss Luo nodded smoothly. "The person who appeared at the summit meeting that day was you, right?" "The woman," Miss Sophia suddenly said. "Who's the other woman?" "I don't think it's Eleanor. It's more like one of my creations." That lady's current body was indeed created by Miss Sophia. Boss Luo nodded. "I think so too." Miss Sophia was silent for a while. "Although I don't know what kind of soul is in its body now, at least it doesn't seem to have been humiliated." Boss Luo said, "Miss Sophia seems to care a lot about her work." Miss Sophia said casually, "If it's not my favorite thing, how could your shop owner take a fancy to it? Even after a few hundred years, my attainments in alchemy have long surpassed the past, but to this day, I still can't replicate the same. I think I didn't just hand over a puppet." Boss Luo thought for a moment and said, "Miss Sophia, do you want to meet her?" "No need." Sophia said indifferently, "It no longer belongs to me. Whether I see it or not, it makes no difference. Tell me why you're here." Boss Luo smiled and said, "Miss Sophia, what do you think I'm here for?" Sophia thought for a moment and said, "This time, your shop owner appeared in front of the world in such a high-profile manner and even sent the two of you to show your divinity in front of people. I'm afraid it's not as simple as just to make a few more transactions." Boss Luo blinked and didn't say anything. This should be a kind of preconceived notion. The change of shop owner had indeed never been officially announced. Boss Luo hadn't been in office for a long time. For those customers from hundreds of years ago, or even longer ago, they didn't have the means to know about the change of shop owner. So, I really don't have the style of a shop owner? Luoqiu didn't really care about this kind of thing. If Sophia only thought of him as a black soul envoy, perhaps the conversation would be more interesting. 100 years ago, you already made a move. Sophia muttered, that war caused the extraordinary power of Europe to fall to the bottom. It's because of this that the WO Club has more room for development. Speaking of which, the WO Club should thank you. Then, this announcement to the world is for another a harvest, right? Just like the war 100 years ago, right? Let's assume that this assumption is true. Boss Luo said calmly. Then, Miss Sophia, don't you plan to buy some insurance in this chaotic world? As expected, Sophia suddenly sneered. Her thoughts seemed to have opened up and become incomparably clear. She muttered to herself, the appearance of the black card will definitely become the source of disaster in the future. No matter who gets the 99 black cards in the end and steps into the shop with the card, he will definitely be the winner and the most outstanding person. For you, he will also be the best customer. I don't deny this statement. Boss Luo nodded and then said, Miss Sophia, do you really not plan to buy insurance? As a regular customer, I might be able to give you some discounts. Sophia looked at Boss Luo expressionlessly and said calmly, as an emissary, your level of speaking skills is not up to standard. Don't keep promoting to customers. You should take out something to stimulate customers' desire to buy. Sorry for the lack of manners. Boss Luo nodded and made an expression of listening. Sophia leaned back on the chair and felt that she was gradually leading this conversation. She casually asked, Tell me, sir, why are you here this time? There's no special purpose. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, I just want to take a look at the New World Alliance. Take a look at what? Sophia subconsciously frowned. Could it be that the shop had other opinions about the appearance of the New World Alliance? The thoughts of the shop owner behind the scenes could not be understood at all. Boss Luo said, Can I know the purpose of the New World Alliance? Sophia's mouth opened slightly in surprise and then she sneered. I thought that nothing could be hidden from you. Boss Luo said, I'm not like the old shop owner who likes to see everything. You're a bit special. Sophia was slightly surprised. I've seen many black soul emissaries, but I've never seen anyone like you who doesn't treat your shop owner as anything. Most of the emissaries are very careful and will not expose themselves like you. Perhaps it's because of your uniqueness that your shop owner allowed you to show your divinity in front of others. Boss Luo did not deny it and smiled. Sophia said, There's no problem in telling you the purpose of the New World Alliance. But can I treat this as a transaction? I sell, you buy. What price are you offering? What does Miss Sophia think is reasonable? Boss Luo asked back. Now, you look a bit like a black soul emissary. Sophia nodded and said, I'll tell you the New World Alliance, or the Club S plan. At the same time, you have to answer a question of mine. What do you think? I want to know this question first, Boss Luo said directly. Sophia also said directly, Is the fool dead or not? Miss Sophia, the fool, you know, is indeed dead. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, But it's true that the fool is not dead. Sophia's light golden eyebrows slightly furrowed as she lowered her head and muttered to herself. In other words, there's a new one. After a while, she nodded and said, This answer is not ideal, but it's enough. Listen carefully. The WO Club formed the New World Alliance and gathered a large number of transcendents. Their current purpose is to establish the Transcendent's ruling position in the modern world. Some of them think that in this world, they can directly step into the Transcendent's civilization and open the door to a new world. This is also the origin of the New World Alliance. Their current purpose? Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Then what was their previous purpose? Sophia looked at Boss Luo in surprise and said calmly, Their previous purpose is not important anymore. After all, the fool is dead. Now, there are two guys who are very active in the club. One is the sun seat, and the other is the moon seat. After the fool's death was confirmed, these two guys have the intention to join forces and take over the club. Luochio said, There are many seats in the club. Other than Miss Sophia, do the others have the same opinion? Sophia said calmly, I didn't say that I have the same opinion, nor did I agree, cunning brat. Boss Luo did not reply that he was not a brat. Instead, he smiled and said, Thank you for your answer, Miss Sophia. Sophia hummed in acknowledgement. She really thought that the young man in front of her was just a special black soul envoy. She did not think that he was a shop owner. The owner of the shop she knew was arrogant and unsociable. He exuded a sense of loneliness from head to toe. He was the kind of guy who had no interest in anything else. As for the young man in front of her, although he showed his power in the summit meeting, he probably borrowed the power of the shop where he lived. If any black soul envoy could suppress all the supernatural powers in the world, then they would have nothing to do with it. Everyone could go and play with their eggs. Don't cultivate any more. Just be a pig. That was why she was so casual. She did not think that the young man was superior to others. She was even a little arrogant. After all, she used to do business directly with the owner of the shop, and the black soul envoy was just an employee of the shop owner. Of course, the young black soul envoy's attitude made Sophia quite satisfied. This was what a waiter should be like. Sit down. Don't keep standing. Miss Sophia waved her hand at this moment and said, Don't be scolded by your shop owner when I have the chance to meet him in the future. You're welcome. Boss Luo smiled faintly. I'm leaving. Sophia was surprised. Now? Boss Luo said, Before coming here, I've already walked around. At first, I just wanted to take a look. After that, it's time to leave. Sophia really wanted to ask the young black soul envoy, You're not here to sell to me? Do you still want to do business? I'll definitely reject you, but you can't just follow the routine, right? I'm Catherine the Great. How can I not care about my reputation? Is there a problem? Boss Luo smiled and asked. No. Sophia shook her head and said indifferently, I won't send you off. Sorry to disturb you. Boss Luo put the book back on the bookshelf and was about to leave. Wait. Sophia suddenly shouted for him to stop. Then, under Boss Luo's astonished gaze, Sophia stretched out her palm. A cube that looked like a Rubik's cube slowly floated out. The cube started to separate, combine, and fold. Its volume also gradually increased. In the end, it even became a cupboard the size of a bedside table. Sophia pulled out a drawer and said indifferently, Since you're already here, bring this thing back to your shop owner. These are. Boss Luo was stunned. He was very familiar with the things that Sophia took out. There are some replacement parts here. Sophia waved her hand and items started to fly in front of Boss Luo. There are also some materials for the maintenance of the puppet dolls. I'll send out a set about every 100 years. Your inventory should be almost used up. Take it back. Consider this 100 years' worth of supplies given to you. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, I've seen some of Miss Sophia's transaction records. The records don't seem to indicate that Miss Sophia has the obligation to continue providing these parts and materials. Sophia snorted lightly and picked up a feather pen from the table. What I do is not for a small messenger like you to judge. Leave, I'm going to draw the alchemy blueprint. Looking at the parts and materials in his hands, Boss Luo suddenly asked, Miss Sophia, if I give you a chance, would you be willing to buy back your work? Her gaze moved slightly, and she looked up without answering. Sorry to disturb you. Finally, Boss Luo said goodbye softly. The feather pen spun lightly on Sophia's fingers. The blueprint on the table was still blank. Just looking around? Sophia sneered and muttered to herself, I can't believe what you're saying. I don't know what you're planning. It's just that, the fool, while muttering to herself, Sophia opened the drawer beside her and took out a white mask with a unique pattern. She put it on her face. At the same time, a screen was lowered from the wall of the study room. Soon, a middle-aged man in a silver-white uniform appeared on the screen. The man said respectfully, Your Excellency, the Empress's seat, what can I do for you? Sophia said indifferently, "It's too noisy outside. It's disturbing my work. Ask the people outside to be quiet." "As you wish, Your Excellency," the man said quickly. "I'll immediately inform the patrolling troops near your manor." "One more thing," Sophia said again. "Tell the sun and the moon that I don't intend to agree with them. Leave." The man's expression changed slightly, but he did not say anything. Instead, he responded respectfully. Sophia turned off the screen directly. Suddenly Sophia frowned. This guy? Did he deliberately reveal information about the fool to me? When Boss Luo returned home, he saw such a scene. A certain witch from another world's academy was now washing the dishes under the supervision of Miss Maid. She said that it was training for newcomers. "I, Nan Xiaonan, have never washed dishes since I mastered the star creation technique. This is bullying. Boss, you're back. I'll get you some tea." Chapter 2053. "I heard from Yu Yi that you haven't made up your mind yet, right?" Boss Luo asked casually during the meal. Nan Xiaonan quickly put down her chopsticks and nodded after calming herself down. "After all, it's a big matter that will determine my future career, so I want to think carefully before making a decision." Boss Luo said casually, "It doesn't matter. We should leave in a few days. Lady Nan can make a decision before then." Leave? Nan Xiaonan was startled and said subconsciously, "Boss, are you going back to Britain?" Boss Luo shook his head with a smile. Nan Xiaonan's heart skipped a beat, and she asked tentatively, "Is it in the void?" Boss Luo nodded. "I plan to go to other worlds. It won't be too long. The time in this world won't be too long." Nan Xiaonan was silent. She could clearly understand the meaning of this sentence. The time in the dimensional crevice was unstable. It was entirely possible that after hundreds of years in another world, only a few minutes had passed when one returned. Of course, there was also a situation where the time in both worlds was synchronized. "Eat, don't be stunned," Boss Luo said casually. "If the delicious food is left to cool, it will disappoint the chef." Nan Xiaonan had to lower her head and eat, but her mind was no longer on the food. It was back to the choice of her career. There was no doubt that Miss Maid gave herself 3 choices. She was very inclined to the option of becoming a branch manager, but later she learned that even as a branch manager, she needed to recruit people by herself. This meant that she only had the authority to open a branch, but other than that, she needed to take care of everything herself. First of all, she had to have a shop, right? However, at the beginning, the storefront of the branch store couldn't be moved to any place like the main store. Moreover, it couldn't be moved to the same place as before. Nan Xiaonan felt that at the beginning, she could only rent or buy a shop, and then use some illusion in the branch to pretend to be mysterious. The branch could be upgraded, but she would have to work hard to complete the business in the future in exchange. The initial stage of starting a business was naturally very difficult, but as a branch manager, there was no doubt that the future development potential would be far greater than that of a salesman or a bill collector of the Black Soul Messenger. However, she had to consider another rather troublesome matter. That was her relationship with her original self in the void. Nan Xiaonan, to put it bluntly, was just a part of her original self's consciousness that was released when she encountered a singularity when she was traveling in another dimension. In the end, she was lost in this subworld. Later, she encountered the real forensic Dr. Nan Xiaonan, who was on the verge of death. Using the identity of the real forensic Dr. Nan Xiaonan, she was reborn as a brand new individual. This was a method of survival that they had no choice but to do. Otherwise, if this part of their consciousness that had invaded the subworld to explore was caught by the will of the subworld, there would be no need to talk about friendship. Powerful beings like them, who had broken through the limits of their original world and walked into the dimensional crevice, had long been branded with the world's brand. All the subworld's wills would naturally be hostile to beings with this brand. Even though the means to avoid it were not useless, they still had to be careful. Even when a Nan Xiaonan, merged with forensic Dr. Nan Xiaonan, she still remained cautious. Until now, after selling herself to the shop, she finally felt a little more stable. The problem of the subworld's wills could be considered solved, and only the problem with her original self was left. There was no doubt that her original self would not let her, who was the consciousness of exploration, continue to develop independently. And now, as Nan Xiaonan, she vaguely had the idea of flying alone in her heart. If she, as the branch manager, acted under the eyes of Boss Luo, it would be fine. Boss Luo, as the owner of the shop, as an indescribable existence. Even if the original self sensed her, the original self, who could only be regarded as a third-rate dimensional powerhouse, would definitely not make a move. She knew herself very well. She was like a coward, so naturally the original self would also be a coward. But because she knew herself too well, Nan Xiaonan knew that in order to take back the consciousness of exploration, the original self would definitely be a coward until the end of time, silently looking for an opportunity. If Boss Luo took Miss Maid out of this subworld temporarily, and she herself was running the branch here, wouldn't she have no one to rely on? No. She would rather develop slowly to ensure her safety. There was no safer place in the world than staying beside the indescribable existence. Boss, you seem to have made up your mind. Boss Luo suddenly looked at Nan Xiaonan. Is this the owner's control over all the black souls? As long as he wants to, he can understand all the thoughts of the black souls? Nan Xiaonan was secretly shocked. The feeling of being torn apart and completely exposed arose spontaneously. She took a deep breath and muttered, Boss, I heard from Miss Yu Yi that you specially added the option of branch manager for me. But I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I still hope to be by your side. At this time, she was completely facing Miss Maid's half-smiling gaze. She had already made up her mind. Are you worried about the original self? Boss Luo said indifferently. But in fact, since you became an black soul, all the connections between you and the original self have been completely cut off. Even if your original self appears in front of you, there is no way to do anything to you. Naturally, there is no such thing as retrieving you later. Really? Nan Xiaonan's eyes suddenly brightened, secretly delighted. Boss Luo said again, Of course, something like being angry out of humiliation will probably still happen. Nan Xiaonan was suddenly stunned. With her current level, of course, she could not defeat the original self. Great sorrow. But even if Black Soul dies, it can be reborn from the Ark of the Covenant. Boss Luo smiled and said, It is also another kind of immortal body. Nan Xiaonan does not have to be so afraid of the original self's revenge. Nan Xiaonan immediately became spirited again. She was secretly delighted. Right, how could she forget this? Black Soul could be reborn from the Ark of the Covenant. Since she could load the file, why should she be afraid of the original self? Moreover, the original self probably did not even have as many hairs as she did now. However, rebirth is not a problem, but it does not mean that it can be reborn just like that. Boss Luo blinked and said, Every time it is reborn, Black Soul's performance will be deducted. If the performance is not enough, it will be a little difficult. Nan Xiaonan instantly looked at Boss Luo pitifully and said bitterly, Boss, you are so naughty. It is very fun to tease me like this. Allow sorrow. At this time, Nan Xiaonan recalled the conversation with Miss Maid earlier. She asked why so many life lights in the Ark of the Covenant were extinguished. Miss Maid's answer was, the shop owner blew them out. Blew them out? Why did he have to blow them out? Because the performance was not enough, deducting the cost of rebirth and blowing them out directly? So, did the boss want her to take on the role of branch manager? Or did he not want her to take on the role of branch manager? It was so difficult. The Black Soul envoys in the shop all had such a difficult life. I have decided to follow you, boss. Nan Xiaonan made up her mind again and said, I want to see the 10,000 worlds and the prosperity of the other dimension. I don't want to be trapped in one place. The 10,000 worlds and the prosperity of the other dimension? Boss Luo stared at her without blinking. Nan Xiaonan felt goosebumps all over her body, even her toes were cold. She could not help but say in a trembling voice, Is there a problem? I copied this, but it means the same thing. No. Boss Luo shook his head and chuckled. It is a very good idea. Then, about my employment? She asked anxiously. I said, you can choose any of the three. Boss Luo said calmly, since you have chosen, then so be it. You can learn from Yu Yi for the time being. I will work harder, Nan Xiaonan said solemnly. Then she gave Miss Maid a rather ugly smile as if she was crying. Miss Yu Yi, don't worry, I will be very obedient. I like obedient children the most. Nan Xiaonan smiled embarrassedly and lowered her head to eat. She suddenly looked up and was about to ask Boss Luo where he was going when she suddenly remembered Miss Maid's warning, so she had to hide the question in her heart. Boss, if you leave in a few days, can I move freely in these few days? I want to take care of medical examiner Nan Xiaonan. Of course. Boss Luo nodded. After dinner, Nan Xiaonan used the excuse of taking care of business to wash the dishes at the fastest speed, then she excused herself and left. The servant girl came to Boss Luo with a plate of fruits in her hand. I thought Lady Nan would choose to be the branch manager. Miss Maid carefully peeled a grape. Boss Luo smiled. It seems that you and I have underestimated Lady Nan's cautious character. Miss Maid didn't comment, but suddenly said, if it were Miss Nero, she would probably choose to be the branch manager without hesitation. Boss Luo said, are you going to recommend Nero to be the branch manager? Miss Maid shook her head. Miss Nero is too lively, the branch manager is more suitable for the stable type. If you want to recommend, Mr. Taisetsu is actually a very good candidate, but unfortunately, he currently needs to look after the world of God. When Taiyangzi completes the mission and comes back, Taisetsu will be free. Boss Luo smiled and made the decision. That's settled for the time being. Miss Maid had peeled more than 10 grapes in a short time. Taiyangzi and Nero go on a mission together. I always feel that, if they meet, some amazing sparks will burst out. Boss Luo picked up a grape and put it into his mouth, thought for a while, and said, when I was in the New World Alliance, I took the time to meet Miss Sophia. He looked at Miss Maid's reaction. Miss Maid didn't respond. Boss Luo said again, before leaving, she gave me some parts and materials. Miss Maid still said calmly, in the past few hundred years, about every 100 years, Miss Sophia will send the materials to a fixed place, and then I will go and collect them. Well, it's about time. Speaking of which, Miss Sophia actually doesn't have the obligation to provide materials all the time, and she has been very generous over the years. But this time the materials. She looked at her master inquiringly, because she knew in her heart that there was not much time left before she could leave the puppet body. Keep it, maybe it will be useful in the future. Boss Luo smiled casually. When the puppet and the real Miss Maid stood together, it should be a very interesting scene, right? The world was changing. The second day after the establishment of the New World Alliance, the first alliance meeting was held. On the same day, the World Transcendent Summit continued, and the final list of members of the World Transcendent Association's Security Council was announced. Kelowna had the most members, but it wasn't enough to suppress the entire Security Council. On the third day after the establishment of the New World Alliance and the second day of the first alliance meeting, the Alliance announced a shocking event. The Alliance was preparing to build a new city on the sea for all Transcendent and their families to live in. They also announced the establishment of the Black Card Hunter Association, and anyone was welcome to apply for the certification of the Black Card Hunter Association. On the same day, at the World Transcendent Summit, the initial decision to divide the area 300 kilometers around the City of Exclusion into a special zone for the demon race in China was approved. The draft of the Transcendent Management Regulations was also approved. On the afternoon of the day of the meeting, the first batch of immigrants to the underwater city was announced. On the fourth day after the establishment of the New World Alliance, the Alliance meeting elected the president of the Alliance. With the help of the Moon seat, the Sun seat defeated the Emperor's seat of the club by a small margin and became the first president of the Alliance. The Moon seat was the first vice president of the Alliance. The Emperor's seat was the first president of the Black Card Hunter Association. On the same day, the first president of the World Transcendent Association, Fire Cloud Evil God, and the two vice presidents were the Ice Tower Master of the Magician Association and the 100 Calamity Taoist of the Mount Tai of Kelowna. Shinryu of Kelowna was the permanent honorary president of the World Transcendent Association. The Radiance Tower Master of the Magician Association was the honorary president. The Pope of the Church was the honorary president. Every day, both the New World Alliance and the World Transcendent Association had big news to announce, but until now, neither side had mentioned anything about the other. These two huge organizations were like two large rivers that didn't have anything to do with each other. They were clearly separated and didn't interfere with each other. Vaguely, the original world seemed to have started to use this as an opportunity to gradually divide into two different camps. The world was changing with each passing day. This world has changed so much that I can't understand it. In the police station, Officer Ma was playing Minesweeper as usual. The ice cream pudding operation had ended a few days ago, and he had returned to his original post. Because of this private operation, Sir Ma was grounded by Bureau Chief Liu. He was forbidden to go out during working hours. "Oh right, Sir Ma, have you heard?" Lin Feng suddenly asked. "Heard what?" Ma Hao stared at him with his dead fish eyes. "I just heard from Xiao Mei from the Archives Department that Dr. Nan resigned. But it was the day before yesterday, and Bureau Chief Liu kept it under wraps. I just heard about it today." "Oh," Ma Hao said indifferently, "it's fine if she resigned. Anyway, this woman didn't work for many days and she took a lot of leave. So, we can finally apply for a reliable forensic doctor?" "No need." Lin Feng shook his head. "I just received the news that a new forensic doctor will come in today." "So fast?" Ma Hao was stunned. "Do you know where he came from? Or is he a young man who just graduated?" Lin Feng shrugged and said, "I don't know about that. I just saw the name on the resume and chased it out. The new forensic doctor's name is Tang." "Oh right, Tang Tianlin." Chapter 2054. Master Sanzang stayed up all night to cultivate. After reading the small mountain of books and DVDs, he slept for a few days and nights. When he woke up, his eyes were still bloodshot. "I understand now." "What do you understand?" Boss Luo asked curiously. "I didn't know what the book meant when I first heard it, but now I'm a book reader." "Ba." Master Sanzang put his palms together with a compassionate expression. "Since I'm a book reader, it's time for me to collect the copyright fee." A mouthful of cold coffee sprayed out of Nan Xiaonan's mouth, turning into a mist. The new witch in the shop widened her eyes and sized up the sloppy bald man with bloodshot eyes and stubble on his face. She had finished dealing with the matter of her identity as a forensic doctor, and now, she had officially stepped into the workplace without any worries. She clung onto her boss and followed him wherever he went shamelessly. "Copyright fee?" Boss Luo seemed to be surprised as well, and he asked with interest, "How do you plan to collect it, Master?" "That's easy." Master Sanzang slapped the moonlight cash on the table. "I'll go to your door and collect it." Nan Xiaonan didn't know the history of this rectangular box, but she couldn't help but ask in a good mood, "Master, how do you plan to collect it?" "That's easy too." Master Sanzang took out a kitchen knife and slapped it on the table. "If you don't give it to me, I'll send the white knife in and the red knife out." Nan Xiaonan felt glad that she had put down the coffee cup earlier. "Is this really a senior monk? I'll go now." This master seemed to be a man of action. With the kitchen knife in hand and the kasaya in hand, he opened the cache and disappeared. Nan Xiaonan froze in disbelief. Boss, this is? It's a cache that allows you to travel freely between subworlds. Boss Luo smiled casually and said, the Moonlight Cache. The ability to freely travel between subworlds. Nan Xiaonan gasped and exclaimed, the power of a void artifact? Boss, this is a real treasure, let's play with it. It's not as beautiful as you think. Boss Luo smiled casually and said, I've seen this treasure box before. It seems to be damaged, and sometimes it doesn't work. Someone must have tampered with it. What a waste, Nan Xiaonan said indignantly. Freely traversing the shuttle world, this is a space-type void artifact. In the dimensional crevice, no matter how many subworlds origins you have, you won't be able to exchange for it. Don't look at how this witch from the World Academy once roamed the void, but she was actually very poor. Not to mention the level of the void artifact, she didn't even have the second-grade secret treasure. She could only use the star creation world that stored star creation creatures to pretend. As for now, as an independent consciousness that had already left the main body, there was no need to mention things like property. You seem to be very obsessed with the so-called void artifact? Boss Luo looked at Nan Xiaonan with interest. Nan Xiaonan shook her head, thinking that if she had one or two void artifacts from the start, she wouldn't have been lost in this subworld. There were many dangerous places in the dimensional crevice. If she was careful, she could explore them. At this moment, a treasure light flashed, and a guy wearing a tattered space suit suddenly appeared before Boss Luo and Nan Xiaonan. Water! Give me water! Even if I die, I won't drink water made from my own urine. Sorcerer! Nan Xiaonan was shocked. Sorcerer Sanzang had hair. How long had passed in the short 1 or 2 minutes that he had disappeared? The haired sorcerer Sanzang picked up the teapot and poured the tea into his mouth. After a while, he calmed down, but he still looked shocked. Too scary, too scary. That thing called strange juicy. There's no food or drink in the cosmos. I almost died. Nan Xiaonan finally understood what the shop owner meant when he said that it didn't work at all. This thing couldn't be accurately located at all. She could only rely on her face every time she traveled. However, even if it was broken, it seemed that she could accurately return to the shop owner's side. Nan Xiaonan looked even more suspicious. She didn't understand the shop owner's attitude toward the treasure box. At this moment, the haired sorcerer Sanzang took off his tattered space suit, revealing the white kasaya inside. The kasaya was still spotless, but the sorcerer who wore it was clearly a lot more sloppy. Ba. It seems that I won't be able to collect the copyright fee in a short time. The haired sorcerer Sanzang sighed. Everyone likes to freeload. It feels good to freeload all the time. Ever since I traveled west, I've been freeloading, begging for alms. This karma has to be repaid. Nan Xiaonan didn't know if the sorcerer was skilled or not, but he was very good at saying that it was true. Nan Xiaonan rolled her eyes in annoyance. Sorcerer Sanzang had been freeloading in the manor for a few days. Sorcerer Sanzang seemed to have a new idea. He hugged a few books and hurriedly ran back to the guest room he had freeloaded in. Boss, this sorcerer is very strange. I don't know what's true and what's false. As a new employee with dreams, Nan Xiaonan felt that it was time for her to display her value. Why don't I test him? No need to test him. Everything the sorcerer says is true. Luoqiu shook his head. He's using me to cultivate. Cultivate? Boss Luo smiled casually and said, whoever speaks first loses. This sorcerer will lose for sure, Nan Xiaonan said directly. How can the boss lose? At that moment, a half-shaved bald man poked his head out from the corridor on the second floor. Sorcerer Sanzang said excitedly, those guys are wrong. They're not real Journey West. At most they're fanworks. I want to write my own. Give me more books so that I can copy them. Boss Luo smiled. A black circle instantly appeared above the living room. Then, all kinds of books poured down like running water. However, they weren't piled up randomly. Instead, they were stacked neatly. In the blink of an eye, a small mountain of books was piled up in the living room. Sorcerer Sanzang's eyes lit up. He casually grabbed a book from the mountain of books and rushed into the room. "You'll be my first reader." Nan Xiaonan glanced at the black circle that wasn't closed. She had a feeling that the mountain of books before her wasn't all. This was just the beginning. At this moment, Ms. Maid slowly walked down from upstairs. Today, Ms. Maid spent about half a day to perform a system maintenance on Main God's World. She also added a new mod update notice. The next expansion pack of the Evil Dragon era was The Second Coming of the Evil Dragon. The Second Coming of the Evil Dragon? There's no end to this, right? Damn it. Little she gritted her teeth as she looked at the game update notice and the introduction of the new expansion pack. She was so angry that she almost smashed her mouse. The introduction went like this. The final Sunset Dragon was too difficult. For tens of thousands of years, it couldn't find its own kind. Loneliness swallowed the Sunset Dragon's remaining rationality. Tens of thousands of years of loneliness made it feel that everything it saw was beautiful, so it crazily plundered the entire world. Finally, at the end of the storm, the final Sunset Dragon found a way to leave its bloodline in the ruins of the gods' battlefield. Through the strange power of the Earth Egg, the Sunset Dragon successfully gave birth to a descendant. She stored herself and the dragon egg she laid in the ruins of the battlefield of the gods. After countless years, a tiny crack finally appeared on this unique dragon egg. Smack! The mouse was still smashed. Little she jumped onto the chair and grabbed the screen with both hands in fury, wanting to smash it. Bad woman! Damn bad woman! You're the one who has been single for tens of thousands of years. You're the one who produces and sells your own products. Damn it! I'm not done with you. Ring ring ring. At this moment, an alarm-like thing in the bedroom sounded crazily. Little she didn't have time to be angry at this moment. She quickly cleaned up the things, took out a math book, and pretended to sit properly. After a while, the door of the room opened, and Auntie Ren and Lizzie walked in with several big bags. Little she, your sister Lizzie and I are here. Are you reading? You're a good child. Auntie Ren walked into the kitchen with the bags with a gratified face. Let's eat hot pot tonight. Are you looking forward to it? Yes. I like hot pot the most. Little she gradually became cute. Lizzie squinted and looked around suspiciously. While little she lowered her head to read, Lizzie inadvertently reached out to touch the computer screen. It's hot. However, she followed him into the kitchen as if nothing had happened and started to get busy. Little she looked over and saw that Renziling and Lizzie were already busy in the kitchen. She sighed regretfully. She was really caught in a trap of her own making. She didn't expect things to turn out like this. Originally, it was just a casual remark that she blurted out. Later, the news spread like wildfire within the administration of Divine Land. That day, when she appeared in front of Renziling as Xiaoxi, the true dragon of Divine Land actually had the thought of smashing a pot that had nothing to lose. Her idea was very simple, that was, to appear as little she and make Boss Luo suffer. But she didn't expect that Boss Luo would turn around and checkmate her, saying that he was about to go on a long journey and Renziling would be in his care. What could she do? What she said would be thrown out, and soon, Kelowna Shinryu's words were recognized as the golden rule in Kelowna. She dug the hole herself, so she had to bury it herself. Another thing was that Renziling had officially gone through the formalities to adopt Little She. By the way, Little She. Auntie Ren's voice suddenly came from inside. What's the matter? Didn't I tell you that you have a brother? Bah! Who wants this brother? Yes. What's the matter? Nothing, it's just that your brother is leaving tomorrow. He said that he has to go back with your future sister-in-law to deal with some family matters. He'll be gone for a few months. Auntie Ren walked out while wiping her hands on her apron. I was going to arrange a formal meeting between you two, But it's too late, so I can only wait until next time. Hey little she, what's wrong with you? Why do you look so pale? Are you not feeling well? That's right. She was not feeling well. I don't want this brother, and I don't want this so-called future sister-in-law. When she thought about how she had to use little she's identity to greet that damn bad woman's sister-in-law in a soft voice, little she, Kelowna Shinryu, felt uncomfortable all over. Ren godmother. Shao, she suddenly sighed at this time and hesitated to speak. What's wrong? Are you really not feeling well? Ren Xiling hurriedly reached out to touch the child's forehead. Where are you feeling unwell? My heart doesn't feel well. Little she held her chest at this time and said, I don't know why, but when I heard you say future sister-in-law just now, my heart felt very uncomfortable, so uncomfortable, and I wanted to cry. Yi? Auntie Rin couldn't help being stunned and frowned subconsciously. How come? You haven't seen him before. I don't know what's wrong with me. Little she suddenly threw herself into Auntie Ren's arms. I just heard that my brother has a wife, so I feel very uncomfortable. Auntie Rin didn't know whether to laugh or cry, gently patting the child's head. You're making a fuss. It's true that he's your brother, but you haven't seen him before. Little she said dreamily, when I was a child, my father invited a fortune-teller home. That fortune-teller said that I would marry my brother in the future. At that time, my father didn't believe it and said that the fortune-teller was a liar. But the fortune-teller said that this brother was not his biological brother, so he wasn't afraid. My father got even angrier and threw the fortune-teller out. Ren Xiling couldn't help but frown at this time. Little she said faintly, although the fortune-teller left, my father always cared about what the fortune-teller said. My father always felt that my mother would take me and run away with another man, so he kept my mother and me at home. Finally, one day, my mother couldn't stand it and quietly left. Then my father didn't care about me and went out to work. Little she. Ren Xiling lovingly hugged the child tighter. Little she said softly, in fact, what my father didn't know was that the fortune-tellers secretly told me that when I was 14 years old, I would start a new life, and my destined family and husband would appear. When my father wasn't at home, I would think about what this brother is like. I thought about it every day, every night, and even in my dreams. Little she looked up at Ren Xiling with tears in her eyes. I know it's wrong, but I just feel so sad. That fortune-teller really said that. Auntie Rin frowned. At this time, little she gently nodded in her arms. Speaking of this, Auntie Rin didn't really believe it in the past, especially when Master Huang was asked to look at Luo Chio's marriage. But that Master Huang was obviously a charlatan. She almost vomited blood after looking at him. But today was different from the past. Now the extraordinary power had appeared, and it didn't avoid the eyes of the world. Could it be that the fortune-teller really had the ability to accurately predict that little she would marry her brother? What should she do? Her son and future daughter-in-law Yu Yi seemed to be very harmonious, and their relationship was very stable. But looking at little she's appearance, it was obvious that because of the fortune-teller's words when she was young, she kept thinking about it day and night, and even started to have delusions. This was actually a kind of self-hypnosis that started when she was young, so that she had a kind of obsession with, this must be the right person for the brother that she had never met, right? At this time, Auntie Ren's heart was in a mess. She thought that if it really didn't work, she would go to the orphanage and adopt an older boy. This was also a kind of realization, right? Chapter 2055. The car stopped in front of a popular milk tea shop. The car was a shabby car driven by a friend. As for the original car, it was in the repair shop. Sir Ma climbed out of the car with difficulty. Ma Hao looked around and soon found Yi Yan. He quickly walked over. There was a woman sitting next to Yi Yan with her back to him. Good boy, no wonder you asked me to come here. It turns out that you have a girl. You are really a playboy. See who she is first, Yi Yan said grumpily. Who is she? Ollie? It had been a few years since they sat together and chatted like this. It was the first time for them to have such a gathering since they went their separate ways a few years ago. At first, they didn't speak and just looked at each other. After a while, Yi Yan said, "I have to leave in the afternoon. My flight is at 4 o'clock. So soon?" Old Ma was stunned. Yi Yan nodded and said, "I came back for a business trip. Now that I've finished my business, I have to go back and make a report. Although, this matter has gone beyond all my expectations." "The Public Order Squad," Ma Howd murmured. Who would have thought that the wanted guy would suddenly become the guy in charge of supervision? If that's the case, your immediate superior must be having a headache right now. Yi Yan didn't say anything. Strictly speaking, he was only a marginal member of the Special Affairs Department of the Criminal Police Organization. He had preliminary contact with some cases involving transcendence, but he didn't have much law enforcement authority. Even this time, if the members of Ice Cream Pudding were not confirmed to be ordinary people, they wouldn't have sent him to hunt them down, but even so, the department still sent the little werewolf to help him. "Speaking of which, I have to go back to the capital tomorrow," Ollie said very casually. Yi Yan and Ma Howd both looked at her. Ollie said indifferently, "Why are you looking at me like that? Is it strange for me to return to the capital?" "It's not strange. You will definitely go back." Ma Howd immediately shook his head and said, "But go back now? Isn't the summit still ongoing?" "It's closing tomorrow." Ollie thought for a moment and said, "Actually, everything that should be said in the meeting has been said. According to what I know, several representatives left early today." Ma Howd was stunned and then said in a low voice, "Are these delegations secretly going to the New World Alliance again? I saw on the Black Card website that the New World Alliance's reception of extraordinaries was like that of an emperor. Money and mansions were secondary. The key was that they would directly become nobles, which could be passed down for 3 generations. Aristocrats. This New World Alliance is really retro. How dare they call themselves a New World? I've also heard about this matter." Ali's face became more serious. "This matter only appeared today. The cause of this matter was a post posted on the Black Card website. It was posted by the official account of the New World Alliance, on the Black Card website. Therefore, there was a new round of uproar in the world's public opinion. As for the World Superpower Summit, because it was nearing its end and there was no eye-popping event like the Power Conference, the popularity of the discussion had decreased a lot these days. On the contrary, the New World Alliance began to occupy the high ground of public opinion. Since its establishment, there had been big news every day. For example, this time, the extraordinaries who had become nobles of the New World Alliance were jokingly called celestial dragons in the real world. It seems that the New World Alliance is really unscrupulous in order to attract extraordinaries. Yi Yan shook his head. "I'm afraid that the life of ordinary people will be even worse." Sir Ma saw it very clearly at this moment and said disdainfully, "When have ordinary people ever had a good life? Whether it's the livestock of society or the livestock of extraordinaries, they are all livestock." Ollie was unhappy and stared at Ma Howd. She laughed and scolded Ma Howd. "I think you are the livestock. Mrs. Ma is already old, and you can still have a second child." Sir Ma said proudly. This was because he was still young. The 3 of them chatted for a while. Sir Ma raised his milk tea and said, "I won't say much else. It's meaningless to say it. Here, I'll use milk as a substitute for wine. I wish the 2 of you a bright future. I'm going to drink this milk." He spoke with a loud voice, and others looked at him strangely. Yi Yan and Ollie could only cover their faces and pretend that they did not know this person. "Okay," I sneaked out. "It's time to go back to work." "Well, I'm grounded," Old Ma said bitterly. "I'm leaving tomorrow, and there's no rest. I'll go shopping by myself." Ollie flipped her hair. "See you next time." "I don't have anywhere to go. I'll just sit here for a while." Yi Yen looked at the two of them with a smile. Yi Yen sat alone at the tea table outside the milk tea shop, scrolling through the news on his phone. Suddenly, someone slowly placed a bottle of Corona in front of him. Yi Yen looked up and saw a dark-skinned bearded man. Bernard, a member of Ice Cream Pudding and a former information technician of the Interpol. "I don't think I ordered this?" Yi Yen was startled at first, then he frowned and said, "It's on me." Bernard pulled out a chair and sat down. "You've been chasing us for several months. You should be tired. It's nothing to treat you to a drink." Yi Yen did not make a move. He just asked curiously, "You can come out? The people from the Magician Association gave you freedom?" "I only came out after greeting them," Bernard said with a self-deprecating tone. Bernard said self-deprecatingly, "I'm afraid this is the most unfree so-called monitor I know. Of course, you and I both know that this is just a political act to save our reputation." "So, you came to me just to treat me to a drink?" Yi Yen said expressionlessly. "That's not it," Bernard said. "I'm here to look for you." "Yi Yen, are you interested in joining our picket squad?" Although this picket squad is a face-saving project, the Ice Tower owner of the Magician Association is fair. She gave us the right to form this squad. Yi Yen was silent for a moment before he asked, "Why, did you consider me?" "First of all, it's because you're a normal person," Bernard said directly. "We've discussed that we don't want any extraordinaries in the picket squad. This is the bottom line. Also, we understand you better." "Understand?" Yi Yen laughed and said, "This should be our second conversation, right? The last time was a few days ago when we were in the farm warehouse." "That's enough." Bernard looked straight at Yi Yen and said seriously, "We considered you because you've been chasing us for a few months, so we understand you. Mr. Yi, you're a very straightforward person. You just need to give me an answer whether you're willing or not." "Can't I have time to consider?" Yi Yen shook his head and said indifferently, "Also, you're wrong. I'm actually not very straightforward, and I'm an indecisive person. It's difficult for me to make a choice. This is my personal phone number." Bernard pushed a card in front of Yi Yen. "Whenever you have an answer, call this number. I'll keep this number for you forever." Yi Yen chuckled and said, "It's a pity that you're not a beauty. I don't dare to move at all." "Touched?" Bernard nodded and said, "I hope we can have a touching friendship. I'll wait for your answer, Mr. Yi. Also, I think we'll meet again soon." Yi Yen still didn't dare to move, watching Bernard leave. In the end, he picked up the card and flicked it with his finger. Then, he casually stuffed it into his clothes and raised his hand. "Waiter, the bill." The little celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain was a bit busy these days, because many seniors of Taoist sects came to find him, saying they wanted to discuss Taoism. They said they were good friends with the old celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain, and that they had killed demons together when they were young. Some even said they made a mistake when they were young. "Senior, I heard you're cultivating pure yang qi. How did you make a mistake?" Momo looked at this old man with a red face in amazement, like a celestial being. His hair was snow white, but his skin was like a newborn's, as if it would break at the slightest touch. Well, there was also the smell of perfume. The old man smiled but didn't say anything, which was more thought-provoking. He said he hadn't seen the old celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain for many years, so he hoped to visit him one day. Momo said seriously. His little temple on Dragon Tiger Mountain was too small to accommodate so many people. How about De would generously buy him more protective talismans so that he could expand his little temple? Everyone said enthusiastically. Dragon Tiger Mountain was a unique Taoist sect in Kelowna, but they could only live in a small temple. It was a waste of talent. "We have money, we have strength. Little friend Mo, don't worry, we'll take care of it." "That's right. Little friend Mo, which mountain are you on now? How about this? I'll buy your mountain and give it to you as a gift." Well, we'll take it as a gift from our Taoist association. Indeed, it's time to develop it. Little friend Mo's talisman technique is unparalleled in the world. It'll be ridiculous if we don't develop it. When they said that those who had the money would contribute, they would ask for hundreds of millions. When they said that those who had the money would contribute, they would start to look for large construction teams. Those who said they'd buy the mountain really sent their disciples to do it. The little celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain only knew now that the Taoist Association was really rich in the secular world. He felt that the old celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain didn't allow him to fool around in the Taoist Association, so he missed out on a few $100 million. However, these senior experts had been cultivating hard to find a breakthrough, so they didn't know how to spend their money. That's why Secretary Song's cunning ideas made these people feel strange. Speaking of which, these seniors didn't have it easy. Before the spiritual energy was released, they were determined to find a breakthrough. They cultivated hard and never complained about being tired. But now that the spiritual energy was released and there was a turning point in the world, they were sure that they had no hope of making a breakthrough. Their last hope was defeated by the cruel reality. That's why they indulged in their last days. No matter what, these senior experts were becoming more and more enthusiastic with each passing day. On this day, the little celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain couldn't handle it anymore. He called a floor attendant of Song Dynasty Hotel and exchanged clothes with him before strolling out. Actually, Momo didn't want to stay at the Song Dynasty Hotel. However, after the power conference, the 100 Tribulations Taoist sent a message to him, hoping that he could stay with the Tao Sect Association for a few days instead of moving together. Momo guessed that this Mount Tai of Taoism had something else to say to him, but the 100 Tribulations Taoist had been attending the summit these days and hadn't come to find him yet. Where is this? The little celestial master who was wearing the attendant's clothes strolled in the courtyard of Song Dynasty Hotel. How extravagant such a secluded garden can be opened in the busy city. He leisurely found a pavilion and sat down. He played with his phone as if he was killing time. But before he walked to the pavilion, he saw a woman in white training clothes sitting cross-legged on a big rock behind the pavilion. Chu Yang. That mysterious woman who represented the Taoist Association in the Power Conference and shocked everyone with her fist. The little celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain didn't expect that he would encounter this mysterious woman. He couldn't help but feel surprised. At this moment, Chu Yang, who was meditating, slowly opened her eyes as if she sensed someone approaching. I went the wrong way. Momo smiled casually. I won't disturb you. Wait a moment. Chu Yang suddenly stopped him. What's the matter? Momo stopped and looked back. Chu Yang looked at Momo and remained silent for a while before saying softly, You practice talisman arts? No. Momo smiled. I don't practice talisman arts, I just sell safety talismans. Talisman arts can't guarantee safety. Only by selling safety talismans can people know safety. Chu Yang pondered for a moment, then jumped down from the rock. She picked up a tree branch and drew something on the sand. The little celestial master of Mount Longhu lowered his head and looked. As he looked, a look of surprise gradually appeared on his face. This is? Momo couldn't help but frown. This is a talisman art from the pre-Qin period, Chu Yang said indifferently. But I don't practice talisman arts, I can only remember some of it. I only remember this talisman completely. Maybe you can understand it. Momo didn't speak. He even squatted down and stared at the talisman on the ground. This talisman is a bit strange. A talisman art from the pre-Qin period? Miss, where did you see it? I forgot. Chu Yang said indifferently. The little celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain shrugged. Then I can't understand it? It's up to you. Chu Yang threw the branch into the grass nearby. This talisman, I'll give it to you. Momo didn't speak, continuing to frown at the talisman. He didn't even notice when Chu Yang left. He just muttered from time to time, "This thing, why do I feel it's a talisman for sealing something?" Song Howren had just returned from the gym when he saw Princess Chu Yang standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the Forbidden City. Young Master Song walked over slowly, asking casually, "I heard from the waiter that you went out?" "I met someone," Princess Chu Yang said indifferently. Young Master Song pretended to be jealous. "Who did you meet? A man or a woman?" Princess Chu Yang didn't notice young Master Song's expression. Her eyes seemed to be glowing, saying softly, "Someone who may be able to suppress the aura of Kelowna again."